Tuesday, September 14th, 2021. I'd like to call into session the combined open meeting. Before I do so, I would like in this order, the Northborough Chair, Lauren Bailey Jones, to call her committee into session, Roger Challen, Chair of Southborough School Committee, to call into session, and then Paul Desmond for the Chair of the Northborough-Southborough Regional School Committee, and then I'll call into session the Northborough-Southborough Superintendents Union number 3. So I'll hand it over to Lauren Bailey Jones.
Thank you, Ms. Frank. The time is 5:32, and I am calling to order the Northborough School Committee. Kelly Gannett, myself, and Joan Frank are in attendance tonight.
Roger Challen.
The time is 5:33, and I'm calling to order the Southborough School Committee meeting for September 14th, 2021. In attendance are Kamali O'Mealy, Jennifer Primack, Kim Tolander, and myself. Is Katura waiting to be promoted, or we haven't seen her yet?
She's not in the audience at this point.
Okay, I'm through then.
I'll call the Northborough Southborough Regional School Committee into order. Attending myself, Chris Covino, John O'Shea, Karen Ayers, Lauren Bailey, nope, wrong committee, Kathleen Howland, Kathleen Polichko, and Dane Kalenda as of 5:33.
And as of 5:33, I'd like to call into session the Northborough-Southborough Superintendents Union number 3. And in session for the union is Laura Bailey Jones, Roger Challen, Jennifer Primack, and myself. And before we begin our Zoom meeting, we have the standard to be read into session. Pursuant to Chapter 30 of the Acts of 2021, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, this meeting of the Northborough School Committee, Southborough School Committee, Northborough-Southborough Regional, and Northborough-Southborough Superintendency Union number 3 school committees will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the district website at the posted URL. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to listen or watch the meeting may do so in the following manner: NCAT Educational Channel, Verizon Channel 29, Charter Channel 194, or SAM Government Channel, Verizon Channel 37, Charter Channel 192. No in-person attendance of members of public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technology means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the district website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. And before the agenda was a URL to register in advance for this webinar. The first item that we have on our agenda for the combined meeting is action of the minutes. The first one is action of the joint special open meeting minutes of January 27th, 2021. That will be a vote of the Northborough, Southborough, and Region. And we will have the chairs take the motions and have it seconded and have any discussion, then take the votes. We'll take them in order. Northborough School Committee.
Thank you. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the joint special open meeting minutes of January 27th, 2021.
Kelly
So
Gannett.
moved.
Pardon,
Give it to
Kelly Gannett.
Kelly Gannett made the motion, and who seconded?
Joan.
Joan,
Second.
thank you. Any discussion? All right, roll call vote. Ms. Frank?
Yes.
Ms. Gannett?
Yes.
And myself, Lauren Bailey Jones, is a yes. It passes unanimously.
Thank you. Roger for Southborough.
So I would look for a so moved for that identical motion.
So moved, Kim.
So moved by Kim. Is there a second?
I'll second Jen.
And seconded by Jen. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Kamali?
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Kim,
Yes.
and I vote yes, so that's unanimous.
And I'll entertain the same motion for the region.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Jones, seconded by Chris, I believe.
Yes.
All right, any discussion? All right, roll call vote. Karen Ayers,
Yes.
Paul Butker here yet?
No.
Not seeing him. Chris Covino,
Yes.
Joan Frank,
Yes.
Kathleen Howland.
Yes.
I believe Kathy Key is not here. Dan Kalenda,
Yes.
Sean O'Shea,
Yes.
Kathleen Polichko. You're on mute, Kathleen. Kathleen, are you there? Maybe we'll come back to her. I don't know. I'm a
Nope,
yes.
here I am, here I am. I'm on
There
my
she
phone.
is. All
I'm
right.
here. Okay, yes. Yes.
Very good. And I'm a yes, so that passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you. So we have that passed by all three committees. The next two parts of minutes that we have, maybe somebody could combine them. We have action on the combined open meeting minutes of June 16th, 2021, and action on the combined executive session minutes of June 16th, 2021, which can be released. So we'll start with, I'm thinking that maybe we could do both of these in one motion. And
Perfect.
it's going to be by Northborough, Southborough region, and the union. So Lauren Bailey Jones is chair.
Excellent. Thank you. Would anyone like to make a motion? So Kelly.
I'll make a motion.
Great.
Do I have to make the whole thing, read the whole thing?
Yes, or I'll read it and then you can just say so moved.
Okay.
So we're
All right.
looking for a motion to approve the combined open meeting minutes of June 16th, 2021, and to approve and release the executive session minutes of June 16th, 2021.
So moved?
Second,
Great, we have a motion and a second. Let's do a roll call vote. Ms. Frank,
yes.
Ms. Gannett,
Yes.
and myself, Lauren Bailey Jones, is a yes. It passes unanimously.
Roger Challen for Southborough School Committee.
All right, I'll give this a try. I'm looking for a so moved for the same motion. How'd I do?
Perfect.
Where's the so moved?
So moved, Kim.
So moved by Kim. Is there a second?
I'll second Jen.
And seconded by Jen. Let's see, I still think that, okay, so roll call vote. Kim,
Yes.
Jen,
Yes.
Kamali. I'm looking. Kamali's room. Well, I guess we'll count that as an abstain, and I vote yes. So we have three of us voted yes.
And I'd like to turn it over to Chairman Paul Desmond for the region.
Kamali, want to vote yes before we do that, maybe?
Yes, I'll do that, yes.
Okay. And I'll entertain the same motion for the region.
So moved.
Moved by Joan. Second by Karen. Any discussion?
So just a point of order, Mr. Mr. Desmond. Chairs understand that they can make these motions themselves, right? These are very perfunctory motions that, we now spent 10 minutes, not quite talking about, how to do a motion. And if we need to have a separate class on those, I'd recommend that and save us all a heck of a lot of time going forward.
Okay, fair point, Dan. Thank you. Roll call vote. Karen?
Yes.
Still don't see Paul. So Chris Covino?
Yes.
Joan?
Yes.
Kathleen Howland?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Kathleen Polichko?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. It's unanimous.
And for the supervisory union, thank you, Paul. For the supervisory union number 3, I'd like to entertain the same motion.
So moved.
So moved by Lauren, second. Second for the union?
I'll second Jen.
Thank you, Jen. Any discussion? This is a roll call vote. Lauren Bailey Jones,
Yes.
Roger Challen,
Yes.
Jennifer Primack.
Yes.
Is Couture Martin still absent? Okay, and myself, yes, it passes unanimous. Thank you, everybody. Next on to our agenda is the personnel, and I'll hand it back to Superintendent Martineau.
Sure. So I have two updates under the personnel topic. The first update is welcoming some new members to the leadership team. And the second update is from Mr. Maurice Myrie and Julie Doyle. So we have 3 new members of our NASA leadership team. And I'd like to spend a few minutes just introducing those members to you. First, we have Dr. Jennifer Lipton O'Connor, who is the Social Emotional Learning Coordinator pre-K through 12. Again, this position is split 40, 30, 30 in terms of funding. Jennifer is a familiar name in our district as she has served in the role of school psychologist at Algonquin Regional High School for the past several years. She brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise supporting students' SEL needs and is a great asset to the district leadership team. Jennifer holds a doctorate of philosophy and a master's of arts in psychology from Harvard University and a master's degree in cognitive science from MIT. So very well educated, very well prepared for this position, and welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you all. It's a pleasure to be here. I think I've met most of you and attended some of the committees as a parent in town as well. So I appreciate the opportunity to be part of this team.
All right. Usually it's a 10 or 15-minute speech, Jennifer, but we'll let you get away with just a brief remark. So, so welcome. So next we have Megan Kelty, who is the K-8 mathematics coordinator, who divides her time between Northborough pre-K through 8 and Southborough pre-K through 8.
I'm going to jump in, Greg, because she's ELA.
I'm sorry, ELA. Thank you. Give her a new title, give her a new responsibility.
She looks slightly panicked, so I just thought I would jump in.
Thank you. So Megan has served as a reading specialist for the Westboro Public Schools for several years and also brings experience from her role as a reading specialist in the Westford Public Schools. The search committee was impressed with her expertise, knowledge base, and passion for ELA, not math. And Megan is a graduate of Boston College, where she majored in education and Hispanic studies. And Megan also received her Master of Arts from Lesley University, and Megan has hit the ground running. So welcome, Megan.
Thank you very much. I'm just like Jennifer said, I'm delighted to be here and joining this team. So thank you for making me feel so welcome, everybody.
And we have Dr. Mary Copley, K-8 ELA coordinator. Just kidding. She is the K-8 mathematics coordinator, and Mary is not a new face to our district. She serves as the Peaslee principal. But Mary has an extensive background in curriculum coordination. Mary has served as K-8 mathematics coordinator for the New Canaan Public Schools for many years, and as a district mathematics instructional leader for the Grafton Public Schools. Mary will continue to serve as Peaslee's principal and will take on additional responsibilities as K-8 mathematics coordinator for the Southborough Public Schools and the Northborough Public Schools. And Mary has her Doctor of Education in Teacher Education and Curriculum Studies. So welcome, Mary, in your new role, your additional role.
Thank you all. Hello. I'm very excited to get my hands on the math curriculum, and we've already started some initiatives. I was lucky enough to be at the table last year, so I had an inside view, and we're just keeping the ball rolling. So thank you for your support.
And welcome. And we will be speaking a little bit about the organizational teaching and learning chart later in the agenda, and we'll tie these positions together during that agenda topic.
And before we go to the next agenda item, I'd like to, on behalf of all the committees, welcome all the new additions to our administrative staff and all their new duties as Dr. Coakley has. So, and I think you'll have a wonderful, rewarding and year ahead. So thank you very much for all your dedication and expertise for the Northborough Southborough students. The next item we have is the teaching and learning organizational chart, and I'll hand it over to Superintendent Martineau.
So Ms. Frank, I just have two updates under personnel from Mr. Maurice Myrie, who's our Chief Information Officer, and Julie Doyle, who's our Director of Instructional Technology and Digital Learning. So I'll turn it over to Maurice for a brief update, and then we'll transition to Julie, and then turn it back over to you, Joan. Maurice, welcome.
Yep, thank you. Good evening to all members and my colleagues at the school district. So just very brief, I'm focused on cybersecurity and network assessment. I'll be conducting a network and cybersecurity assessment at the regional high school to begin to get the holes in. I don't know if people read the article today about Apple having a 0-day threat, and they've required everyone to update their Apple phones and or watches. I have more responsibility than that with 10 schools. So I'm focusing on that primarily because I would hate to have to be in the superintendent's office to explain to him why we got ransomware or been hacked somewhere from someone around the world. So I'll be bringing in a vendor to do a stem to stern review of the cybersecurity and network assessment at the regional high school, starting there first and possibly working our way out to the other 9 schools. So that's my brief update. That's what I'm focused on. And then obviously the new school year, and I'll turn it over to my lovely colleague, Ms. Doyle, to talk a little bit more about the student devices and things like that. Thank you.
Thanks, Maurice. And hello, everyone. We're excited about this upcoming school year. So my updates will pertain more to the teaching and learning side of the technology department and as well our student information system. And I will start by telling you that we recently successfully launched the PowerSchool enrollment module. And this module is part of our student information system. It's allowed us to streamline student enrollment and data collection. Families new to our district now complete the registration process online, and returning student families complete all back to school forms online. After implementing PowerSchool last year, we have a better understanding of it and continue to appreciate the ways that this new system will enhance our district operations. Next, I'd like to give you an update on student devices. In order to provide equitable access to technology, the district loans a device to all students in grades K to 8 for the entire school year. The high school allows students to use their own device if they choose, but will also provide devices for any students who do not have access to one. In Northborough, students in grades K and 1 receive iPads, and students in grades 2 through 8 will be given a Chromebook. In Southborough, Neary students as well as students in K and 1 receive iPads, and students at Woodward and Trottier receive Chromebooks. Preschool classrooms will be equipped with iPads for students to use. The fact that teachers know that all students have access to a device helps make technology integration in the classrooms more seamless. As tough as remote learning was last year, it accelerated the development of instructional technology skills that teachers will use this year and beyond. We also now have every teacher in grades K through 5 using Google Classroom, and all teachers in grades 6 through 12 using Canvas. These collaborative learning management tools have enhanced the way we communicate and integrate digital learning into the classroom. And finally, I'd like to mention that as part of our strategic plan, all schools will be taking a closer look at how to better implement the state's digital literacy and computer science standards into all content areas. I'm looking forward to collaborating with Megan and with Dr. Cookley and even with Jen Lipton around technology and SEL. And just to finish, I want to quote what's written on the Department of Education's DLCS website, and that is that digital literacy and computer science knowledge, reasoning, and skills are essential both to prepare students for personal and civic efficacy in the 21st century and to prepare and inspire a much larger and more diverse number of students to pursue the innovative and creative careers of the future. That's all I got.
All right. Before we continue, I just want to thank Maurice and Julie for their dedication and hard work over the past 6 to 8 months. It's been a very challenging time in the technology department, and there's no shortage of tasks and responsibilities. and both have handled their responsibilities with great professionalism and integrity. So thank you, Julie, and thank you, Maurice.
Okay, thank you. And as we go on, the next is Teaching and Learning Organizational Chart. I'll turn it over to Mr. Martineau.
Sure, I'll provide some context. So in May 9th, actually, to be specific, in 2019, Superintendent Johnson and I presented to the combined committee a proposal for kind of thinking about the operations and management overall organizational structure. We have been implementing that organizational chart over the past year and a half and have had great success of defining roles and responsibilities. And at the time of that presentation, we also talked about doing a similar process for teaching and learning, and really looking at the roles we have and functions we have, and making sure that roles and responsibilities were clear and well defined. So in your packet, what was provided was a teaching and learning organizational chart. Many of the positions on the organizational chart are not new positions, but just better defined, and really looking at how the aspect of teaching and learning in our district is accomplished and who is accomplishing those tasks. This evening, you had a chance to meet Dr. Lipton and Dr. Coakley and Ms. Kelty. They're part of our teaching and learning team. And I will ask Stephanie just to speak a little bit about kind of the vision of our teaching and learning team, the role of the assistant superintendency, and how this all fits together.
Thank you, Greg. So it's very exciting to, both with these new positions and with our established longtime positions, to see the opportunities as we, as this process is taken shape over time to create the support on the operations side to allow for greater depth on the teaching and learning side. And as you can imagine, with 3 districts, 10 schools, and then the many disciplines, ranging from math, ELA, to music, health, PE. I mean, teaching and learning encompasses an incredibly wide breadth of topics and disciplines and focus areas. By building out and further clarifying and defining the work in this team, we are able to provide more sustained support to schools, to school leaders, to teachers, and therefore ultimately to our students in all of these different areas. We're better able to follow through, whether it's with curriculum decisions, student learning data, professional development, creating connections across the disciplines, adopting new standards as they roll out, updating report cards. The list is long. And with the work of this team, not only can we go deeper and be more sustained in our support for each of these different topics and disciplines, but also we can have the opportunities to create the coherence and connections across the disciplines, across the levels, across the schools, and across the districts. So I am incredibly excited to be a part of this team and to work with this fantastic group, and then in connecting to all of the schools.
So I'll just add too, with the addition of Assistant Superintendent of Operations and segmenting all of the responsibilities that the Finance and Operations Director once had. Some of the responsibilities of the Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, like residency and some of those other non-teaching and learning tasks, have shifted to Assistant Superintendent Lavoie. And it's really helped us kind of think about how do we use people's expertise? How do we use Dr. Reinhorn's expertise in teaching and learning? How do we use Keith Lavoie's organizational expertise to really move our operation forward? I will share that this is what our organizational chart looks like in terms of teaching and learning. Not all disciplines are represented, and I will share one area that we'll be focusing on as we move through the FY23 budget process is really that science education piece, and really having that STEM coordination and coherence represented on our org chart. So with that overview, we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, I do see that several board members do have questions. I'd just like to thank you for the presentation, Greg, for you and Stephanie, for the flow chart, and also for the very detailed 15 positions that are underneath Stephanie, and that are very descriptive with the qualifications, that provide the work environment, physical requirements, and it's very detailed, which means that if any time somebody would leave one of these positions, it is very easy to outline what would be the next step. So kudos to both of you for doing this. I think it's wonderful, and it's also something that will help us in our budget process as we go forward. The first one I have is Kelly Gannett, then Kathleen Highland, Karen Ayers, and then Kamali. So Kelly Gannett.
Hi, thank you. I agree, Joan, everything is very detailed and I love it. Are all of those positions filled, or are any of them, are we looking for any of those positions still?
So those positions are all, have people in those positions currently, so they're all filled at this point.
Yay, staffing, Heather, right?
Okay, any follow-ups, Kelly? Okay, Kathleen Highland.
That was going to be my question. So thanks, Kelly.
Karen Ayers.
Yeah, first of all, I didn't get to acknowledge the technology, and kudos for the online enrollment forms. Yay! It's been a long time coming, and that was awesome. Really great. I've heard great things about it. I enjoyed it myself. So that's great. My question was about a data specialist. Who does your data for teaching and learning, for DESE forms and so forth?
So great question. So, but before I answer that question, I just also want to share that we do have one position that is vacant on the teaching and learning chart. So, and then that is Assistant Director of Student Support Services. But we are minutes from closing a deal and having a person and making an announcement in the next day or two. In terms of data, so it is, Karen, it is a question that we often ask of who, what are our data needs in terms of how do we collect the data, who's responsible. We have Lorraine Wolfrey, who is at the central office, who is the data specialist. Her primary function, though, really centers around all of the state reports that we're required to submit. That consumes much of her time, and she does do some support in terms of account creation, working closely with Maurice and Julie. And we also have a person in the guidance department at the high school who supports the data operations. But it is an area where we are now collecting so much data that we are looking at potentially thinking about how do we structure our faculty and staff or positions so that we have one or two people who are centered on account creation, integration, because every program that we use requires some type of data integration. And we will be looking to fill some type of position in the near future.
Okay, yeah, great. And then you answered my question about the other curriculum areas, so that's good. And then just my only other comment, because again, I'm regional, but we do have 3, and you guys probably look at this and say, oh yeah, Northborough, Southborough, but for just clarity, it might be easier on the org chart to write like in Northborough District Math Leader, Southborough District, because I'm like, why are there 2? And then I had to be like, oh, right, one for, that's it. Otherwise, awesome.
Thank you, Karen. Next is Kamali.
Yes, hi everyone.
That last comments was one of the feedback that I was going to give on the org chart is kind of do some sort of segmentation there, labeling. I also wanted to just go back to the technology specialist that spoke earlier. We talked about having like a team come in and do a security analysis of starting with the high school and then going further back. But I'm just curious to know, with all of the devices that we're handing out to the students, they also have access to the internet to do all of their assignments and research, and they use it in their free time. So, let's be real about it. How are we also monitoring our cybersecurity through that? And is that something we would be posing to the team that does that?
So right now, that's all monitored through the firewall. So students and staff can't get to certain categories of stuff. And then some of them is also timed. So for example, we put a threshold on Facebook as an example during the school day. We actually block it from the other younger schools because every school has its own firewall in place, which is a gift and a curse because I got to manage 10 firewalls, 10 different ways. But that's one of the things that we do is the firewall is my gatekeeper around that. And then there's certain levels, once people sign on to Wi-Fi, there's certain levels of Wi-Fi names, as we call them, SSID in my business, that people can get attached to that only limits them to what they can do. But really we focus on the applications that my colleague Julie Doyle is responsible for more primarily to be used on those devices. But that's why I'm starting at the high school, because as we know, many of the high school students do have their own devices as well as teachers, cell phones and all that good jazz. So I have to make sure I factor in that in as well. So I need to tighten that up as well, as because those are many holes for me to kind of fill.
Great, excellent.
Okay, Greg, seeing that there aren't any other questions from the board members, I'd like to proceed on to the agenda. And the next item that we have is the draft of the 2022-2023 student calendar.
It's hard to believe we're already looking to the 22-23 school calendar or school year. But as part of process, I present the committee with a draft calendar for future discussion. I will share that the calendar that I'm proposing is very similar to prior years. Over the summer, I did get a couple of community emails around requesting certain holidays be added to our calendar. Diwali and Eid al-Fitr are two of the holidays. At this point in time, I'm not recommending additional religious holidays be added. However, that's a school committee decision. And I think that we have done some work around creating a religious observance policy, so that making sure that students who observe religious holidays and observances can take the time, and that teachers are educated on what those holidays are, so they're not, or observances are, so they're not assigning homework. So again, this is a draft calendar that I'm recommending. I will post the calendar to the website to get community feedback. The calendar does not need to be voted per policy until May. However, it's nice to have the calendar voted so families can make plans with vacations and the upcoming year.
So Greg, I saw on your linked agenda that you'd like to have the vote at the next meeting, which is December 15th, 2021. As members get to view it, should they go through their chair, or if they have any comments, should they direct them to you?
If they can go through the chair, and I'll work closely with the chairs on adding any feedback. And also I will be, again, posting this to the website and seeking community input on the calendar as well.
Okay, thank you. And can you share that what information you get from the public? Can you share it at the K-8 meetings in the region with us between now and December? Okay, I see we have one question or comment. Lauren Bailey-Jones.
Thank you very much. Greg, in order to make the decision next meeting, I think that information that would be helpful for me and perhaps other members are First of all, how can community members and families give their comments and feedback on this calendar? What's sort of the mode for that? And then second is, I'm forgetting, I'm sorry, but maybe you can answer that first part.
Yeah, so I will post the calendar on the website, and also I will put it in a weekly update over the next several weeks to get input and community feedback, and then I can share that with the chairs, and we can get that information to the committee members. Although it's nice to have the calendar voted in at the December combined meeting, it's not a requirement. I think the latest we'd want to vote, or the committee would want to vote a calendar, is at its third combined meeting. I believe it's in March.
Thank you. And I did remember my other question. A few years ago, I want to say maybe 3-4 years ago, did the district send out a survey to families and teachers about the holidays that they observe?
Yes, so we, and I believe there are some committee members who have some historical knowledge, but yes, community was surveyed. At the time, there was some discussions around Good Friday being removed and the Jewish holidays being removed. And that was part of the nexus for looking at the religious observance policy and adding some language so it's clear that regardless of the religion a person observes, that they could take the time they need to observe the religion.
Thank you. Is that information that you could provide the committees about some of the feedback from those surveys?
I can see if it's available. I'm not sure if it is, but I'll check.
Thank you. I'm all set, Joan. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Seeing that there aren't any other questions or comments from board members, we will go on to the next agenda item, which is policy review and development. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Martineau and the Joint Policy Subcommittee members.
Sure. So I'll give a brief update. So on August 11th, the Joint Policy Subcommittee meeting was held, and the committees took up policies that had to deal with personnel and looked at recruiting and hiring, staff transportation, overtime pay, staff responsible use, employee social media, and jury duty. And we really use the regional policies to align Northborough and Southborough's policies. The goal really is to try to have one policy, if possible, across our 3 districts. A lot of times, from experience, and I know many of you have probably had this experience where at a Southborough policy subcommittee meeting, policy members are asking what policy decisions Northborough is making for the region. So this was a way to try to maximize the expertise and have a collective approach to policies. So the policies before you this evening are first reads, and the goal will be to get some feedback from committee members. And then the next meeting is October 25th. It's a virtual meeting from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. And then if we'll bring these policies to the December combined meeting for a second read. So happy to answer any questions, or committee members, policy subcommittee members can add anything I may have missed.
I do not see any hand raised by school committee members. Is there any joint policy subcommittee member that would have additional comments? Okay, seeing none.
Heather has a comment.
Pardon me?
Heather has a comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Heather?
And just one comment for the good of the group. I think one of the things that you'll see as a common theme throughout the policy changes is personnel is changed to staffing, because the term personnel is a dated term and the current term is human resources or staffing. So I just wanted to point that out for the good of the group.
Thank you, Heather. Thanks for always keeping us updated in all these important matters and even legalese. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Not Seeing no other hands raised at this time. Greg, we'll go on to Superintendent's 2021-2022 evaluation, timeline, and goals. And at the end of it, we will have a vote by the committees. The superintendent's evaluation is done by the regional committee and the combined, the supervisory union number 3. But it has been our practice is that the superintendents, including Greg and all former superintendents, always valued every member's evaluation, the tool, comments, suggestions. So even though it's just under those 2 committees, we do have it open to all committee members to submit their evaluations. So what we do here what the process began in the beginning of August when Paul and I met with Greg in person, and Greg went over his goals with Paul and I. And then we had subsequent after that, we had 2 other, I think it was on a phone call, and then some email updates when Greg was doing the finalization of his goals, and we had an opportunity to add our feedback and our comments. So at this time, we would like Paul and I to present and Greg to present his evaluation, his tool, his goals that he would like for this year, and also the timeline. And since this is a joint thing between both committees, the regional and the supervisory number 3, I'd also like to co-chair this part with the regional chair, Paul Desmond. So Paul, if you have anything to add on this process before we turn it over to Greg.
Thanks, Joan, but I don't. I think you covered it well. Thanks.
Okay.
I am, through the chair, I will share my screen. So first of all, thank you for the opportunity to present my goals. I think it's a very important responsibility of school committee is evaluating the superintendent, as you all know. So your feedback and input is welcomed. And Paul and Joan have already provided some feedback, so it's been very valuable. So first I'll speak to the evaluation process, and then I'll speak to the goals, my draft goals, and the standards that I'll focus on for this year. So the evaluation process for superintendents across the Commonwealth is a cycle. It's meant to be iterative. It starts with a self-assessment. So really looking at how I am performing based on the feedback that the committee provided me in my spring evaluation, me looking at the standards and using the standards to see where I need more growth. And then from there, it's really looking at setting goals and developing a plan. So what are the goals I'm trying to accomplish, and how will I accomplish those goals? And then the third step is implementation of the plan. So working with a team across the district to accomplish goals, and then a formative assessment evaluation. So that is the mid-year check-in where I report out on my progress. And then the summative evaluation is the last meeting in June, getting feedback from you around my performance over the year. And then again, every year it continues. So I just spoke about the general process. So self-assessment, uses a self-assessment to develop goals. And really the new process, the new updated superintendent evaluation process, instead of focusing on all 22 indicators, really selecting 6 to 8 focused indicators to focus in on for the year. This evening, presenting the goals and the plan, and then hearing feedback from you folks and making any adjustments. And then also talking about some of the proposed focus indicators. And then in the fall, winter, and spring, it's step 3 is plan implementation. And then winter and spring, so the December 15th and the March 16th, giving the school committees a formative assessment and an update on how I'm progressing toward my goals, listening to feedback, and discussing any adjustments to goals at the mid-cycle review. And then again, lastly, on June 15th, receiving a summative evaluation from the school committees with focused feedback for improvement as I look forward to the upcoming school year. So just in terms of, and I will share this presentation out, in terms of timelines, just giving folks some context of what to expect. So obviously this evening is the presentation of goals. Then we have the goals update at the December 15th meeting and the March 16th meeting. And then the week of April 25th, I will send out evaluation directions and sample forms to the committee members working in partnership with Paula and Joan. In May, we'll have the May school committee meetings. We'll answer any questions around the evaluation process. And then on May 9th, Cheryl Lepre will send out the Google form. And I'll also share my evidence supporting progress toward my goals. And then May 27th, evaluation responses are due to Paul and Joan. And then May 28th through June 6th, I'll meet with the chairs to review a draft. And then lastly, at the combined meeting, that evaluation will be presented in public session. So this evening, I'll share the proposed goals for 21-22. And I really want to share that the goals were developed looking at the feedback received from committee members from this past spring's evaluation, and also really center around the district strategic plan, Vision 2026, Educate, Inspire, and Challenge. The goals that I selected really align with the plan's 5 strategic objectives: empowering learners, equity of opportunity, healthy and balanced learners, educator learning and leadership, and finance and operations to support teaching and learning. There are 4 standards outlined in the superintendent and district administrator rubric. There are only 4 standards: instructional leadership, management and operations, family and community engagement, and professional culture. And I've selected 6 indicators based on some of the areas that I think are important to focus in on of the 22. And those are evaluation data, informed decision-making, environment, communication, shared responsibility, and again, communications falls under the professional culture standard. So it is cross-cutting across 2 of the standards. So the first, the goal that I'm setting is really continuing the work around looking at instructional practices that engage students in developing and demonstrating their knowledge and skills through rigorous, innovative, and relevant learning experiences. It's really around instruction, looking at how do we collaborate within and across schools to ensure that there's consistent implementation of high quality instructional practices. So as we observe instruction in our classrooms across our 10 schools, that we're seeing really evidence-based practices being implemented by our educators. Looking systematically to promote innovation in learning and teaching. I think over the past year, many of our practices were no longer feasible as a result of the pandemic, and we've learned a lot around what we can do and can't do in terms of innovation. And I think teachers really had to think outside the box, and we want to continue a lot of those innovative practices. And lastly, really focusing on providing opportunities for students and educators to use the tools of technology to solve problems, think critically, to learn and communicate. And then my action steps are listed. So that is the first goal. The second goal is really equity of opportunity, provide all students access to challenging and culturally responsive learning experiences that meet their individual needs. And this is really around making sure that all students have access to high quality instruction and that it's differentiated based on students' need. So one of the areas that we're really focused on is developing consistent and coherent systems for collecting student learning data and using that data to better understand needs of individuals and groups of students. So Karen's question around, how do we collect the data and use the data? A lot of the work that we're looking at is creating systems and warehouses so that we're not spending an incredible amount of time collecting the data. And by the time that we get to analysis and synthesis, we've run out of time. So we want to provide dashboards to our educators so they can click on a student and see how a student has performed on an assessment, or how students across a course, for example, have performed on a particular assessment. Looking at developing consistent systems to identify and address students' individual needs, full range of learners, from students who struggle academically or might need a different approach or a different pathway, to students who might need curriculum acceleration or compacting, or might need more partnerships with higher ed because of where they are academically in terms of their needs for learning. Continue to foster culturally responsive, inclusive communities and environments that provide equal access. So again, making sure that all students have access to our school programs and can excel academically, socially, and emotionally. And then ensure excellence in the continuum of educational programming for student support services. So making sure that the student support services programming that we offer meets the continuum of services that we see. And then lastly, ensure quality, coherence, and equitable access for courses and programs, making sure that students are prepared for a variety of pathways and that there's equitable access to those programs. Next is healthy and balanced learners, and really speaks to really prioritizing the social and emotional and physical well-being of students. Dr. Lipton O'Connor was introduced this evening, really trying to bring coherence to our SEL program. We have a lot of different approaches, but making sure we have a coherent approach is essential. So that will be the work of really inventorying of what we have, really thinking about what supports and resources we have and how can we best support our learners. And much of that work is really adopting the CASEL framework to really use as kind of a coherent approach across our 10 schools. The next goal is really educator learning and leadership. It's really around working as a collaborative team at the school level. Our educators working closely with families and students, working with each other. Our principals working with the educators, our district leaders and our principals collaborating, really to support teachers' capacity to improve teaching and learning. The work that we do is really about preparing our students for the world of work and college and career and citizenship. And it's a collective effort. It's not any one person's responsibility, but it's a collective responsibility. So we're looking at how can we provide structures to support teachers' capacity around instructional models, around our district and school leaders' capacity as well. And another goal really is looking at how do we align our district goals, our strategic plan with school improvement plans, and including professional learning plans for educators. So our goal is really to have this through line between the goals educators set, the goals that I set, the goals principals set, that align to school improvement plan goals, that align with the district strategic plan. And the ultimate goals is to get everyone kind of moving in the same direction, focused on the same types of initiatives, so that we have coherence and clarity in what we're trying to accomplish. And then goal 5 is really around supporting the finance and operations to support teaching and learning. Obviously, resources in the budget is an important part of the process to accomplish the goals that we set out for students. We continue to work to try to develop and support and operate sustainable, well-resourced, attractive, and well-maintained schools. And this requires a community partnership. We work closely with, working closely with police, fire to improve school security and infrastructure preparedness, and working with the police departments, the fire departments, the town administration to really make sure we have safe schools. The next goal or initiative really is having open dialogue with the communities around the quality of school facilities that will support the next generation of Northborough and Southborough students, looking at how schools connect to towns' master plans, and looking at making sure that our students have access to, again, well-maintained schools that are conducive to supporting learning and accomplishing the goals we set forth for our students. Another initiative really is to look at energy efficiency and try to maximize our energy efficiency to decrease costs, at the same time increasing reliability, security, and improving facility management. We have many more tools at our fingertips, so monitoring systems, and ultimately, I think we want to kind of reduce our carbon footprint and have sustainability goals as a district. So we are in the adopt a new student information system, PowerSchool. So that is a goal or initiative that was on the goals that I proposed. It continues to be initiative, and we are in year 2 of implementation. The technology team and Julie and principals did an outstanding job, but there still is a lot more power and implementation that we need to move forward with when it comes to our student information system. And then lastly, we continue to work on enhancing our transportation system by improving efficiency and customer service. Obviously, we made a significant change in our transportation to have a later start time at the high school. It's really required us to make sure we have the systems and support families' concerns, transportation challenges, and this will continue to be a goal or initiative as we move forward this year. In terms of standards, so standard 1, instructional leadership, really, my work really is promoting the learning and growth of all students and the success of all staff. I really lead through the work of others, making sure that they have to be effective in their roles. And really part of that work is making sure we have a shared vision of what makes powerful teaching and learning, and is truly the central focus of schooling. And the standards within the indicators within standard 1 really is evaluation and making data-informed decision-making. Standard 2 is management and operations. Again, looking at learning and growth, really making sure we have a safe and efficient and effective learning environment for our faculty and staff and our students. Making sure we're using resources appropriately and staffing and scheduling in a way that maximizes the resources that we have. And the indicator that I selected is environment. And then lastly, standards 3 and 4. Standard 3 is family and community engagement. Really looking at promoting the learning and growth of all students and success of all staff through effective partnerships, families, community organizations, and other stakeholders to support the mission of the school and district. We are very fortunate communities, Northborough and Southborough. We have a great wealth of expertise, and we've been able to capitalize on many of the experts to make our school system an even better place. And the 2 indicators that I selected are communication and shared responsibility. And then standard 4 is professional culture, really making sure that, we're supporting students by nurturing and sustaining school cultures that has reflective practice, high expectations, and a growth mindset where we're always in a state that we're always learning. We're always staying current with latest research so that we are doing our best in support of our students. And again, communications, making sure that we have strong communications around what that means across all stakeholders. And at this point in time, I will stop and welcome any questions and feedback.
At first, Greg, I would just like to thank you and Paul for working together in doing the goals and also looking at the indicators under the standards. And just to educate the board members is that in the evaluation tool, you can go to the Massachusetts Department of Secondary and Elementary Education. There is a sample form of what is required by the school committees in the evaluation. And looking it over, there are two parts. Greg first mentioned his goals, and then he mentioned the 4 standards. And under that, in working with Greg and Paul, and looking at those 4 standards that are set by the Department of Education, I saw that under each of those standards, it is required that the superintendent selects 1 to 2 indicators, which means the minimum could be 4, just 1 indicator under each of the standards. And in looking over those that Greg submitted to Paul and I saw that Greg had put in his evaluation 6 indicators, which means that Greg is doing above the minimum that what is required of the state, this Department of Education. So the process, as Greg mentioned, we will be coming back at the December meeting, and at the March meeting, Greg will be giving us updates on his goals. Before I take questions from the audience, I'd like to just first turn it over to Paul Desmond as chairman of the region to see if there's any other comments.
Thanks, Joan. I'd just like to say another great job, Greg, in coming up with a lot of meaningful goals that I think will do a lot to push the district forward. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Paul. And it's great working together with you on this endeavor. I have questions from Kelly or comments, Kathleen Holland, and then Lauren. Kelly first.
Thanks, Joan. I think it's great. I love all of the goals that you've come up with. I know all of this is like a new type of process, and some of it's directive from, I think it's, what is it, the MASC that did it. The only thing that I thought was hard with the evaluation process last year is with that last standards evaluation process, I felt that it was hard to score. And I don't know if anybody else felt that way too, it was really great that they give you kind of like benchmarkers to, like, you know, if they do then it's, you know, they reach this peak. And if they do this, then they're in this level. And I liked that part of it, but I feel like some areas, like I probably scored harder than I needed to, just because of the way that the descriptions were. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody, or if anybody else felt the same way about it, but that was my only comment about it. More like the practicality things, not.
Well, Kelly, maybe as we go through the process, if you have any questions, if things come up in December and definitely in March, you can reach out to your chair, Lauren, or reach out to Paul and I, and we could try to answer those questions and see as we go through the process. Maybe like in March, when Greg really does his goals, maybe we'll go over those standards also to see if there's any clarification. Would that help?
Yeah, no, I mean, I thought the process, you know, there's the 2 parts, there's the goals and then there's the standards. And I just felt that the standards, like, I just felt that, and again, I don't think it was necessarily from anything that the chairs did the last, you know what I mean? Like, I think it's more of set from the directive from the MASC, or wherever we get the directive. I feel like it's more of like on that end, lacking the information than it is on you guys, but I just didn't know if anybody else felt that way when they did the evaluations.
Yeah, because on the standards, when we do the evaluation, we do it like in 4 areas, and they give you a long description of what is exemplary, what is proficient, and the other 2, you know, needs improvement. And so it's like you can't pigeonhole what is happening into one of those. It is a very long narrative that they give. So,
yeah.
And it is given by DESE. That's where that comes from.
DESE, that's what I couldn't remember which organization and acronyms it was.
Well, you and I, Kelly, we attended several years ago that from MASC.
Yes.
Marlboro, they did the great the superintendent's evaluation process.
Yes.
So,
I was going to say,
sorry, Paul.
Just real quick, when this first came out several years ago, somebody gave us a presentation. I can't remember who it was. That it was helpful to address just what you're talking about, Kelly. And I remember at that time they were saying only about 2% of all personnel, whether it's a teacher, superintendent, or whatever, should be marked exemplary. I mean, it was supposed to be that difficult. And I don't know if that's still the case, but it would be helpful to kind of get some feedback on that.
Yeah, I think, Paul, I would, that was going to be my comment, that exemplary should be a very high bar, that it should almost be impossible to reach that exemplary rating. One of the challenges that you folks have evaluating a superintendent is not, you don't have a pool of 50 superintendents. It's hard to benchmark too against, okay, my performance against another, but I can work with Joan and Paul around really trying to unpack those unsatisfactory needs, improvement, proficient, and exemplary of the 6 indicators that I selected. So it might be easier for you to look at the evidence based on the rating scales.
Okay, next question from Kathleen Highland.
Well, I'm just tuckered reading all those goals, I'd have to say. Greg, I got to give you credit for really being ambitious with them, but I know that it's very nicely balanced with your practicality and your sensibilities. What caught my ear was your sustainability goal, and I'm wondering if we can put on our agenda for an update on the regional committee of the solar input on the high school. And I know that I'm not on the K-8 committees, but I'd also be interested in next steps of that, because I find that to be such a lofty goal, and one that I'm very interested in following in detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. Lauren Bailey Jones.
Thank you. Greg, for your strategic objective on healthy and balanced learners, I really loved seeing all the different action steps there. The first one that talked about identifying and collecting baseline data for students' SEL. I'm curious if there has been any data taken in the past about social emotional health for our students. And for this baseline data, is this data that will be taken from a survey developed by the district, or I guess what mode will this baseline be taken?
So it's a great question, Lauren. So at the middle and high school levels, we do have data around SEL through the Metro West surveys that we have been participating in for over a decade. At the elementary levels, we don't have a lot of baseline data. That is one of Dr. Lipton O'Connor's tasks, is to look at what are those tools we can use to collect data around SEL. We have explored the use of Panorama. And I will say it won't be something that we develop and create internally. We are not experts in the creation of this type of data collection, and we'll be using most likely some type of outside framework that is evidence-based.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lauren. Roger Challen.
So I have a couple of comments. I'm actually a little concerned I might get to the end and then somebody's going to say, well, is there a question here? So I'll try to end with a question of some sort. I remember thinking this last year, and other folks have alluded to it tonight. I think, was it, let's see, I'm trying to remember who made the comment. Maybe Kathleen said she was not exhausted, okay, but just overwhelmed as far as the number of goals, okay, or hearing the goals. And I realized that, you know, the responsibilities that you hold there's a lot of them. So I guess I'll try to finish with the question, which is, as you sit and determine what goals you're going to identify for the year, how do you know whether it's going to be too much to bite off or where to stop? Because there's the old jack of all trades syndrome, you know, that you know, sort of exists everywhere. So I guess that's how I end up with a question.
Yes. So I guess, so just comment that really my goals are the goals of the district. And that if you look at all the director's goals, they're going to have parallel goals. And it's really this thinking that we're all working toward this work. So it's a shift in thinking. My work really is leading through others and supporting their work to accomplish the goals outlined in the strategic plan. So yes, if you said Greg Martineau is responsible for these goals and he is the only one who's going to move this work forward, completely unrealistic set of goals. But if you look at, as I look at the goals, these are really team goals, that we have a team of folks working toward these. And really, the success is not my success, but our success as a leadership team.
All right, that helps frame it a bit for me. Thank you.
Okay, seeing that there aren't any other questions. Oh, I'm sorry, Kamali? Kamali, do you have a question or comment? Oh, I see.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Sorry about that. I was just offering that, I really think that it's great to have this level of transparency and detail that we can reflect back on when we're making decisions. And one of the things that I've talked about before and we've talked about as a group is improving the ways and means that we communicate with the community. Could you tell me where that is in here if I missed it? And it ties into the, what Maurice Myrie and the other technology specialists were speaking about, like where their role is in doing some of that work, or maybe it's part of someone else's role that's in the org chart.
No, so thank you, Kamali. So it's where is it embedded? So really under standard 3, it's embedded in family and community engagement. And really around looking at, how do I engage in two-way, culturally proficient communications with families and community stakeholders about student learning and performance, looking at different formats, looking at making sure there are systems in place. So again, looking at who's helping communicate those consistent messages. We talked about having communication teams and strategies, and that's part of the work we're looking forward. Also, it's under standard 4 and professional culture, and it's really around interpersonal, written, verbal, and communication skills, and really keeping staff informed, families informed, and community in the work that we're doing as a district. So those are the 2 areas, Kamali. And what we're looking at is right now we don't have a coherent communication plan. I think we do a lot of communication, and what we're working on is trying to make sure we have coherent messages going out. So if you took 4 newsletters across 4 different schools, you'd be able to start to see a theme emerge from the work that we're doing as a district. That's going to take some additional resources that we haven't quite identified at this point in time.
Okay.
Greg, there was a comment from one of the school committee members, wanted to know if what you were just talking about in your response to Kamali, if you could share that slide again.
So it was just the standards, the strategic objectives that he was reviewed earlier. So each of them are labeled 1, 2 through 6. And so the answer was that they were embedded in standard 3 and standard 4. Not really a page number to it.
And I can share what I can do. I think in the information that I provided in the school committee packet, you can see the descriptors of each of the indicators I selected, and you can see the exact language, again, what I just paraphrased.
Okay, and Kim, if Kim just said thank you. It came from Kim Tolander. So Kim, if you need any assistance or if you can't find it, just send me an email and we can I can share that with you, or or Paul or I can do that, or your chair. Okay, Kim. All right. Seeing that we do not have any other questions or comments from members, I would now like to turn it back. Even though it is the region and the regional committee and the supervisory number 3 that votes for this, we also have the Northborough K-8 and the Southborough K-8 to take a vote to accept 3 things on this tonight: the superintendent's 2021-2022 evaluation tool, superintendent's goals, and the timeline. So I will now turn it over to Northborough for a motion and a second in their vote. Lauren Bailey Jones.
Thank you so much. I apologize that I was distracted. Could Kelly Gannett please take the lead on this?
Sure, no problem. Let me pull up the thing. It's the downside of not having.
Do you want me to make that motion?
Do you want to start, Roger? I'm trying to pull up the document. I lost it on my screen. Thank you.
I will look for so moved from Southborough to accept the superintendent's goals, timeline, and what was the third thing, Joan?
The evaluation tool.
Just the evaluation tool, correct, okay.
With a year.
To accept the 2021-2022 evaluation tool, timeline, and goals as presented tonight.
So moved, Kim.
So moved by Kim. Is there a second?
Second, by Katura.
Seconded by Katura. Do we have any discussion from any of the Southborough committee? All right, hearing none. It's a roll call vote. Jennifer,
Yes.
Kamali,
Yes.
Kim,
Yes.
Katura,
Yes.
and I vote yes, so that's unanimous.
Northborough.
Thank you. I would like to hear a motion for the same.
Kelly Gannett. Motion the same as Southborough.
Second.
Thank you. Hear a motion from Kelly and a second from Joan. Any discussion? All right, we'll take a roll call vote. Ms. Frank?
Yes.
Ms. Gannett?
Yes.
Ms. Tagliaferri?
Yes.
And myself, Lauren? Yes, it passes unanimously.
Chairman Paul Desmond for the region.
To Dan's point earlier, I will go ahead and make the same motion for the region, so we just need a second.
Second.
You're right, Dan, that was quick. All right, any discussion? Roll call vote, Karen Ayers,
Yes.
Chris Covino,
Yes.
Joan,
Yes.
Kathleen Holland,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Kathleen Polichko,
Yes.
and I'm a yes too. It's unanimous.
For the union, as chair, I will make the motion, and I need a second.
Second is Roger.
Second by Roger. Is there any further discussion on the vote? On the motion? Is roll call vote. Lauren Bailey Jones,
Yes.
Roger Challen,
Yes.
Katura Martin,
Yes.
Jennifer Primack,
Yes.
and myself, yes, it passes unanimous. So we have it by all 4 committees. Thank you very much, everybody. And thank you, Greg, for the presentation and Paul working together on this. Going on to the next item that we have is audience sharing. Greg, do we have any audience members?
We have 6 audience members, and I'll wait for any of our members to raise their hands. Does not look like we have any audience sharing this evening.
Okay, thank you. And I'd like to thank those audience members that are watching us tonight and participating. Greg, before we go to the adjournment on number 8, I would just like to put agenda items for our December 15th, 2021 that came up tonight would be the vote on the 2022-2023 student calendar. There will be an update on superintendent goals. second reading of policies. And I was wondering if we could take Kathleen Highland's suggestion and maybe put on solar updates, or would that be just a regional?
So that is on the regional agenda for this evening. So we'll have an update this evening, and then we'll add it to the upcoming Northborough and Southborough agendas as well.
Okay. So seeing that there is no other items on our agenda at this time, I would again like to thank everybody for their participation. And now I'd like to turn it over to the chairs of Northborough, Southborough region, and then myself to adjourn the meeting. Northborough.
All right, I move that we adjourn the meeting at 6:52 p.m.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, we'll do roll call vote. Ms. Frank?
Yes.
Ms. Gannett?
Yes.
Ms. Tagliaferri?
Yes.
And myself, Lauren Bailey Jones, is a yes. We are dismissed at 6:52.
For Southborough, it is 6:52. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Kim.
Moved by Kim. I'm sorry, who was the second?
I'll second it, Katura.
Seconded by Katura. I don't think we have discussion here, so roll call vote, please. Kamali?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
Katura?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Looks like it turned into 6:53 during that discussion. Anyway, we are unanimously adjourned.
Chairman Paul Desmond for the region.
Do we have to adjourn? Because we've got another meeting after this, but it's on a different URL. Greg, any thoughts?
Technically, you still can be in session, so just switch URLs.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, region will just go into recession. As chair of the supervisory union number 3, I move that we adjourn at 6:53 p.m. Is there a second?
I'll second it. This is Roger.
Thank you, Roger. Roll call vote. Lauren Bailey Jones.
Yes.
Roger Challen.
Yes.
Couture Martin.
Yes.
Jennifer Primack.
Yes.
Myself, yes. It passes unanimous at just changed 6:54 p.m. Thank you.
All right. So region, why don't we take 5 minutes and go ahead to the other link.
All right. Have a good night. Thank you.
Nice to see you all. Good night.
Seeing none, I'll call roll call vote. Karen Ayers,
Yes.
Chris Covino,
Yes.
Joan,
Yes.
Kathleen Holland,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Kathleen Polichko,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. It's unanimous. That brings us to educational policy. There's none at this time. So on to new business, starting with the school reopening update.
Sure. So we had a great start to the school year. I was reflect back to 1 year ago today when students had not even started the school year. And when they did start, they were in cohorts. So this feels like the right steps toward more normal. There's a great energy at Algonquin Regional High School. I think teachers are excited to be back. Students are excited to be back. And this evening, we'll hear from each director, just briefly, a brief update. And then during Principal Bevan's principal's report, we'll hear some more specifics about the opening at the high school. And then we'll have a quick update from Mary Ellen around COVID-19. And then lastly, Keith Lavoy will give a transportation update. So let's start with Heather Richards.
All right, good evening, everyone. So the staffing and the hiring season has been in full swing for the past 2.5 months. You'll see later on in the personnel report, we've had 9 resignations and 17 new hires. So it's been a hopping season for hiring, and I'm sure Sean will talk a little bit more about some of the hires that have been happening. So it's been a really interesting time from a recruitment perspective. And I just want to share with you that what you're seeing in restaurants and other industries with hiring is no different than what's happening in education. So we are doing a lot more recruitment for our openings than may have been typical in the past. So we are very fortunate. We're a desirable district to work in, and I'd say that although hiring has been more than usual, I would say that it's been going very well. And we have been able to attract obviously 17 candidates to our district and ensure a smooth onboarding process. So a big thank you to Nina Wall and Elaine Chisholm and the Human Resources Department. We have all been working in sync to make sure our new hires have a seamless experience, and a big welcome to the district.
All right, thank you, Heather. Stephanie.
Thank you, Greg. I will give an update just on this summer. We had an opportunity from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education to run a summer acceleration academy. This was offered as a grant. It was an entitlement grant, meaning that there was a predetermined amount that we would be awarded if we applied for it. So we did. And it was a very defined opportunity. It was a week-long academic half-day focused on mathematics for 10th graders. So it told us exactly sort of what we were targeting and how we should be structuring it. So we did run a summer acceleration academy focused on mathematics. We collaborated across districts, and the 8th graders from Northborough and Southborough joined our 10th graders at the high school. And we had 7 10th graders. And just for your curiosity, there were also a total of 21 8th graders that joined them. So that gave us a little bit larger group to work with. Eileen Falcone was our site coordinator. A big thank you to Eileen, who did everything from recruitment of students to working together with her colleagues, Lauren Hesmeyer and Eileen Cronin, who were the other 2 teachers teaching the mathematics. And then also a thank you to the custodial staff and the nurses who supported this program. I will say that I visited multiple times, and there was a great combination of problem solving and sort of math related games with, practicing math skills. And one of the big goals of the week was for the students to have a positive experience with mathematics and walk away from it with a positive experience. And I think one thing we can say with our high school age students is that our attendance was steady throughout the week. And I think that says something about what a great job our teachers did, because it is hard to recruit high school students to come in August to do math with us. So thank you to Eileen and Lauren for all your hard work.
All right, next we will transition to Mary Ellen.
Good evening, everyone. I start every beginning of the school year by letting you know that in student support services and for our district, our school year does not end in June. we get a second beginning with our students in our extended school year program. And we were in person for our regional ESY students as we welcome them into our buildings while keeping them safe and with COVID protocols in place, thanks to Mary Ellen's hard work. And they continued their academic and social learning in 2 different locations for the whole ESY program, but our high school students were located at ARHS. We offered 4, 5, and 7-week programs and walk-in services across 5 classrooms to students grades 9 through age 22, and to 32 students with 28 in attendance. For comparison, our total ESY programming was offered to 265 students with 187 in attendance pre-K through age 22. I do want to thank Keith Lavoie and our custodial staff and Mary Ellen Duggan and Principal Bevan for their attention to detail in readying the school and really making it beautiful for this summer. It was pristine, and we were very thankful for their support and flexibility during the summer months. I'd also like to thank our ESY coordinator again this year, Helene Desjardins, who did a masterful job in scheduling and coordinating all of our programs. And it included challenges with staffing and finding substitute staff. We did have some COVID or some compensatory services that we will be reaching out to parents for related services. It was an especially difficult year. And a few of us actually dusted off our teaching licenses and did some teaching ourselves. So that was a great experience. Deb Lemieux, Kate Clark, and I were stationed at ARHS to support our student support staff and to answer the questions of the day. And then at the beginning of the school year, we did walk around to all of our buildings and found that everybody was busily engaged in activities and ready to start this new school year. Our teams are energized and they're prepared as they begin this new school year. So I want to thank everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Marie. And next we have Rhoda Webb.
Good evening. Greg, am I able to share my screen?
Yes.
Thank you. So we were very pleased to be able to have our English Learner Summer Program in person this year. As we have done in the past, it was housed at Z School, so I want to thank Mrs. Souls and the custodians there, and Keith Lavoie for helping us set up this summer program. This year, we decided to invite our middle school and high school students to the 3-week program. New is that middle school joined our high school, which started August 9th and the week of August 16th and the week of August 23rd, 9 through 12. And the program this year, well, every year it's focusing on developing the students' English language to reconnect with each other. And we always had a theme because our program was incoming first through the high school at Z School to create community. And we focused on STEM this year. While the students were learning applied math and science, they were building confidence, risk-taking, curiosity, and perseverance. I want to thank the teachers who planned this, Mrs. Bunsick for the overall curriculum theme, Mrs. Oliola, Mrs. Stimston for working with our middle school and high school students. What they were doing in the program this year was really focusing on engineering. They had an opportunity to understand the different fields of engineering. And here they're learning how to represent 3D objects by drawing side, top, and front views in preparation for their upcoming bridge design. They did comment that they were doing tons of math during the 3-week program. They were interacting, they were building their academic skills. Here you can see them making plans for their bridge design. And another challenge that they had, that was the very first week, was the Lego Man challenge that they had to actually collaborate to be able to figure it out. As their engineering skills became stronger through collaboration, designing and reevaluating their designs according to criteria and restriction before doing the construction, they We could see their confidence building, which grew in successful final products. I was there the day that they were testing their bridges with 1 pound and 5 pounds to see if they could, the bridge could sustain additional weight. And here you see them designing a contraption to be able to carry a ball for a certain distance. Again, they learned what constraints are. And these were some of the comments that they learned of what they learned and what they said during the 3 weeks. Once again, I want to thank everyone who was involved. And the most important thing, just like Stephanie said, engaging high school students and having them come back day after day is I would say thanks to the what the teachers prepared to keep the students engaged, because they were learning concepts that they had not learned before, while learning the math and the science to be able to take to perform the projects, the challenges that they had. So the school year has begun. We have several new English learners joining our high school. So I look forward to being able to report who our new students are later on this fall.
All right, thank you, Rhoda. And next we'll hear from Assistant Superintendent Lavoie.
Mr. O'Shea, do you have a question for Rhoda?
Just a quick one. You mentioned this program a couple of years ago, and I think it's great. Is this funded through our own budget, or was this grant funded? I missed that part.
No, thank you. I had it in my notes and I forgot to say it. It's funded fully out of Title III grant, which is a grant for English learners. Yeah, and it covers, yes, it covers our summer program. Thank you.
It's a great program. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Greg. Yes, I'll be updating on 3 different pockets for my update. First, I want to start with the facilities, and a huge appreciation to Mike Gorman and his team of custodians for the preparation of Algonquin for the start of the school year. I also want to send out a special thank you to the Algonquin students that served as our summer custodians, not just at Algonquin, but in many of the schools throughout the district. Actually, this is the first year that we got tremendous reviews on their participation in the program and outstanding effort, even in the very humid days. So a huge appreciation to them for their work. We did not have any significant projects at Algonquin this year. Really what the focus was on making sure we were maintaining, especially because we focused so much on the cleaning and the day-to-day throughout the bulk of the pandemic, that having this summer to get caught up on the maintenance was really the focus. We also took the opportunity to inspect our HVAC systems thoroughly and to ready them for the start of the school year, and everything came back with a clean bill of health. I would say that one thing that was troublesome to Superintendent Martineau and I was a pothole in the main lot. And thank you to the cooperation with the Northborough DPW, we were able to take care of that prior to the start of school. So a huge thank you to Scott Charpentier and his team for taking care of that for us. Secondly, I'd like to update you on our food services program. Algonquin cafeteria does look back to normal in many ways, but not in every way. One of the pieces that we are finding is lagging behind a little bit is our ability to get a variety of different types of foods. This is something that is national and certainly statewide, with access to different types of foods is limited. But Diane Kofer and her team has done an amazing job of trying to bring back the cafeteria experience at Algonquin. And thanks to Principal Bevan and the administration, we do have some flexible seating where the kids are still allowed to sit outside, especially with the gorgeous weather we have been happening. We've been capitalizing on that as much as possible. But what we will see over the course of the next couple of months is that menu being expanded. Also want to send out a reminder that all meals through the cafeteria are free for the 2021-2022 school year. This is a USDA program, a national program that allows us to participate in free meals for students. However, we still are allowing a la carte items to be sold, and those are things that will go through our My School Bucks program and the point of sale. So although all meals are free, we still do have cookies for sale and other items in the Algonquin cafeteria. And Greg, do you want me to touch on transportation now, or would you like me to wait for Principal Bevan's update?
why don't we wait for Principal Bevan's update?
Very good. Okay, thank you.
All right, and lastly, we will have Mary Ellen Duggan give a COVID-19 report.
Hi, everybody. It's good to see you. And although I love spending my monthly Wednesdays with you, I was hoping not to this year, but Delta had different thoughts in mind. So secured my plans for the next upcoming Wednesdays. School started and we've had our first few cases, which we expected. We did apply for the DESE testing and screening program, and we're waiting for details about project managers and support and to meetings to set up with our pooled testing vendor that we will be using through this program. With the help of the Southborough Board of Health director and the public health nurse, we were able to get the test and stay program up and running last week, which is awesome because we get to keep our kids in school. The nurses have continue to go above and beyond with everything that has to do with keeping our kids in school, whether it's contact tracing, doing the test and stay, doing all of the testing that we've been doing. So I can't say thank you enough to all of our nurses that we have. The test and stay is a great program that we're able to keep our in-school close contacts in school instead of having them quarantined at home by doing a daily antigen test on them during their 7 days after their exposure. So we're hoping to get the COVID safety checks, which we all know as pooled screening, up and going the last week of September, the beginning of October. Like I said, I'm still waiting to meet with that vendor this week, and hopefully we can get it up and going by the end of the month. In the meantime, we are offering pooled screening for our staff using the vendor we had last year, JCMA. We used them throughout the summer for the summer programs, and we continue to use them for our staff while we wait for this other program to get up and running, which we will implement for everybody, staff and students, once we get it up. My real update today is more of a public health plea, and it's to implore our communities to make a commitment to keep our schools as low risk as possible. To do this, we need everyone, every member, to make a community commitment to follow the mitigation strategies that we all know worked. They worked last year and they'll continue to work this year. As a district, we continue to commit to optimizing and monitoring ventilation, to cleaning and disinfecting, to promoting hand hygiene, to providing PPE, to testing and screening programs, and to prompt and accurate contact tracing. We need the whole community, parents, students, teachers, and staff to commit to the mitigation strategies of monitoring for symptoms, staying home when they're sick, staying home while they're waiting for test results if they were tested because of symptoms, wearing a mask when indoors in school, participating in the testing and screening programs, and getting vaccinated if eligible. We have to think back to that Swiss cheese model that we talked about a lot last year, and each additional layer of mitigation decreases the risk. Some of the layers are district responsibility, and some are a personal responsibility. Please, we ask you, we beg you, we implore you to be safe and be smart and do your part, and to help us keep our schools open and low risk. So, and I am open to any questions. I have members of the medical advisory team are also in the audience. Dr. Medina, our school physician, is there. So if we could promote him to be here to help answer questions, that would be great. And Dr. Ciaranello is on call if she's available.
All right, thank you, Mary Ellen. Looks like we have a question from Dan. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, hi, thank you, Mary Ellen. I did have some calls from some concerned parents that, and there's no belief right now that the region is going to try to mandate vaccinations, but there was some concerned parents that I've heard from that, you know, have seen it in other communities. And is that something that this district is even considering, or can parents be at ease that the region is not looking to mandate vaccines for kids?
I believe that we would not do that. We would rely on the state, the Department of Public Health, who has the vaccine immunization requirements that they have right now. And I can't imagine that we would make a mandate on our own without that.
Yeah, so I'll just answer that. There is no, district initiative around mandating vaccines. And as Mary Ellen said, it would come from the Department of Public Health or a state mandate, but nothing that we're pursuing as a district.
All right, thank you both. There's clearly concern swirling, and so I wanted to ask the question. Thank you.
All right, I'm not seeing any other questions. Oh, I guess you've done a great job, Mary Ellen. Thank you. And
thanks.
Thank you,
for
Dr.
joining
Medina,
us.
for standing by. There was a, Sean Bevan said in the chat that Mike Masserino is standing by, ready to do the athletics update, but he has to run back out to the field pretty soon. So with the will of the committee, can we let him go next?
Perfect.
He has not mastered being in two places at once yet.
All right, well, if he's still there, then we can promote
I
him.
just promoted him. He should be arriving in 2 seconds.
There he is. All right, Mike, we're ready for your athletics update.
Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you very much for allowing me to go up on the agenda. I was actually going to take the computer with me out to the field and we all could hear my report while we're watching the girls soccer game. It was our girls are down 1-0 at halftime when I came in. So I appreciate it. Thank you. Well, first of all, good evening, everybody, and thank you for having me tonight. Hope everybody had a fantastic summer. But before I provide an update on where we currently stand with the fall athletics, I would like to give a kind of a brief recap, if you don't mind, of the 2020-2021 athletic season real quick. But I am proud to announce that we completed a successful 4 9-week fall, winter, fall 2, and spring seasons. The first time ever we've ever had 4 seasons in 1 year. That allowed an average of about 270 athletes each season to participate, and just 410 athletes participated in the spring season alone. I think all of our athletes were just ecstatic and appreciative of the fact that they had a chance to play, even though it didn't look the same or feel the same. We had some minor interruptions, but with an amazing leadership and guidance provided by Mary Ellen Duggan and Dr. Medina and the COVID medical team and the ARHS nurses, we were able to minimize the impact and keep the season going without compromising any in-person learning or the health and safety of our students and staff. So as I mentioned before, we had about 410 student athletes participating in spring sports, and there are 2 remarkable accomplishments I would like to recognize that happened at the end of spring. First, our girls track repeated as District E champions, and our boys rugby were the MIA Division II state champions last year. So those are great accomplishments. Both our boys and girls soccer teams were nationally recognized by the United States Coaches Association for winning the Team Academic Award, which is for exceptional academic performances as a team for the year. And we had close to 25 student athletes participating in the National Letter of Intent recognition ceremonies last year. And as with every year, we hosted signing days to recognize our athletes who are going to play and sign their national intent to play at collegiate athletics. So as we turn to fall for this year, and as is the norm for Algonquin athletics, and our student athletes continue to represent their school and communities with outstanding performances on the field and exhibiting sportsmanship and excellence in the classroom. I don't have many MIA protocols or recommendations because there are none really. The MIA protocol and recommendations is they did not implement protocols for the fall season and will evaluate it on a seasonal basis. The MIA has instituted DESI's indoor mask policy as the only modification right now for fall sports. So all coaches, our athletes, our officials, our spectators must wear a mask when they are inside the building at all times. And this impacts our cheerleading team, our volleyball, and our unified basketball. They've done a tremendous job with wearing the masks inside and during competition. And it also includes whenever we're in our weight room, the locker rooms, the athletic training rooms, and there are no modifications for our outdoor sports. So our MIA is leaving the decisions up to our local school districts across Massachusetts. And then moving forward again into the fall, we have our 3 student ambassadors for our athletic council, with Danielle Adams, Katie Cullen, and Zachary Meal. Will continue to participate in league and MIA leadership workshops coming up this year. Our athletic council and leadership team will meet on Monday for the first time in person in over a year. And these meetings will include our fall team captains and all the players interested in attending. And players and captains will participate in group work focusing on leadership, team building, and exercises. Algonquin Athletics will continue to recognize our athlete of the month, and this award continues to recognize our outstanding student athletes for demonstration of leadership, teamwork, sportsmanship, and excellence on and off the field. And our first awards will be given in October for our September recipients. We are going to bring back our captain's breakfast, and this is something we did about 2 years ago. We weren't able to do it last year, but this is just a special thank you to all of our fall captains for their dedication to the athletic program throughout the year. And just in about 2 weeks ago, for last year, ARHS earned the MIA Sportsmanship Honor Roll recognition for not having any student athlete or coaches disqualified or suspended from any athletic contest during the 2020 and 21 school year. And for all of our sports teams, we're finally back into our regular fall. We've had about 413 athletes participating compared to about 420 of all of the fall sports that went on last year. Our boys golf are 2-0 this season with wins over Westboro and Shrewsbury. Volleyball is 1-1, actually 2-1. They just won tonight versus Shrewsbury and Neshoba. Boys and girls soccer 0-1. Boys had a tough game against St. John's, and girls had a tough loss against Acton Boxborough, and I'm hoping that they are winning against Concord Carlisle right now. Our field hockey is 1-1 with a win over Wachusett, and our boys and girls cross country team just opened up their season today. The girls had a tough loss to Wachusett, but the boys won. Unified basketball starts on September 1st, and our football team had a big win on Friday, 1-0, and they're 1-0 versus Doherty in front of a electric and almost sellout crowd, which was awesome to see. Our impact testing, which we have implemented since 2016 and 17, which is the regional school district offers the neurocognitive online assessment tool called Impact Baseline Testing that helps licensed healthcare providers evaluate and manage the concussions. Of course, this test has been offered to all students to participate since 2016. In 2016, when we first launched this, there was 226 tests that our student athletes took for the entire year. I'm proud to announce that at this date, at this point in time, right now, we have 239 fall athletes who have participated in baseline testing. This is, not just in the fall, and the number increase is due to many different things. It's due to the coaches being involved through communication, their encouragement, their follow-ups, our one-call communication to both communities, including the middle schools, our posting on our website, including information on our registration, and lastly, our new initiative this year, which is conducting team baseline testing in the computer labs. We tried to implement this last year, but due to the protocols we had the fall, we couldn't get the teams in the computer lab, so we launched it this fall. And we are going to move forward with these lab days in the winter and in the spring season. So it's also important to know that that we did not target just the high impact sports. So some sports are labeled high impact because there is a high probability of those athletes will sustain a concussion through contact. For example, just to say a few, a high impact sport would be football, lacrosse, or rugby, or hockey, or soccer are considered high impact, and compared to golf, swim, or cross country, which is a low impact sport. We provided an option for all teams to voluntarily participate, and it didn't matter if they were considered high sport or not. So we're proud that we're moving forward with this. We've got great participation in the fall, 239 tests just in the fall. And just to kind of put it in perspective, we still have our boys and girls soccer teams to go. And if we get the participation rates, we could have upwards of about 87% participation for all of our fall sports teams to begin this year before we even move into the winter and the spring. So I think Tom, Mr. Spataro, Booster President, might be on here later, but I just wanted to say just a kind of a brief thank you to the Booster Club. This level of success would not be possible without the hardworking student athletes that represent our school, the dedicated coaching staff, and a tremendous supportive community. On behalf of the entire athletic department, I'd like to extend a special thanks to our Booster Club for their continued involvement in the athletic program We can always count on the Booster Club to help us out. And with this level of commitment and support in place, it's no surprise to see Algonquin Athletics experiencing such tremendous accomplishments on and off the field. So thank you, Sister Taro, if you're there listening. And also a special thanks to all those that made this last year possible. I know it was not easy. We went through a lot, but it's great to see us return to some sort of sense of normalcy. So thank you again for everybody, Central Office, Superintendent Martineau, School Committee, Principal Bevan, the entire administrative team, our Facilities Department for their hard work to prepare the facilities for practices and games, our athletic trainer, Mr. John Driscoll, our superb coaching staff, Susan Burns, administrative assistant, and our truly outstanding student athletes. So that was my brief report, and please continue to show your support for these young men and women by attending the both home and away games this season. It's great to see it out there. It was packed today. Our fields were packed with games and spectators, and it was a lovely sight. We hope to see you out there. Thank you for your continued support.
Great, thanks, Mike. I just have two quick comments, and that's great news on the impact testing. I mean, as you know, we've all been concerned about that for quite some time, and like you said, about an 85% participation rate is just fantastic news. So thank you for that. And the other was a football game on Friday was awesome. I mean, and as you said, it was great to see the stands full, and it's great to see you out there. And I believe I saw Sean Bevan leading a cheer at halftime, or helping to lead a cheer. So it was just a great atmosphere and a great win. So thank you.
We do have a video on that, Mr. Desmond. We will not release that.
I think we can move along from this agenda item.
All right, any other comments? Tom, did you want to say anything from the booster perspective?
No, I mean, first I want to say thanks to Mike. You know, I've been part of boosters about 5-6 years. I'm kind of on my way of rolling off, but made a lot of friends in the booster community, and you know, really appreciate all the comments, because a lot of us work pretty hard to kind of help the athletic, just enhance the experience for our kids in any way we can. So thanks for recognizing that, Mike. And I'm not sure if you wanted me to do the sponsorship now, or if you wanted.
I think that's coming up shortly.
Okay.
Thanks, Tom.
So through the chair, I just want to also compliment Mike on, you know, enduring a very difficult athletic season last year. He did an outstanding job, you know, making sure he was using his resources and his assets, and the students really benefited. And then again, just his leadership launching this fall season, and then really taking the impact testing initiative and really making sure that he had buy-in from his coaches and players. So outstanding job, Mike.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. I believe that brings us back to the transportation update.
Keith.
All right.
Greg, do we want to make it part of the principal's report? Do you want me to take care of some of the pieces now?
Why don't you do it during the principal's report? That way we can have Mr. Spataro present, and
okay.
That's also what I was thinking. Okay.
Head into his evening. So
perfect.
So we have approval of sponsorships, and I just want to echo Mike Masserino's comments around the boosters. It's a tremendous organization who work tirelessly on behalf of our student athletes. Tom Spataro did not realize that it was a 25-year term limit when he became the booster president. I don't think they're going to let him escape, but he's done a tremendous job. In 2019, you know, really looking at, you know, ways to fund our athletic program. And he was really a catalyst for helping kind of launch the advertising, donations, and sponsorship policy K240. So through his leadership, the Boosters has had great success in getting sponsors. And as part of the policy K240, it's really reviewing those annual sponsorships with the committee. So this is the reason Tom is here this evening, to kind of share the success stories. And Tom, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it. And by the way, I echo just working in boosters and working close with Mike Masserino and his staff, Susan Babarans. Amazing the stuff that you guys had to go through, and even Greg and you and your team with COVID. So and also with the school committee, it feels like forever. That probably about a couple of years ago, we're kind of looking, saying, okay, how are we going to raise money for boosters? What's an easier way to raise funds? Because as you guys know, and anybody that's kind of been part of it, it can be a lot of work to run clinics, to run banquets, to raise funds and go door to door just to raise funds so you can get uniforms or new equipment, or improvement on some of the facilities as far as like our cross country course, and just things that might not be in the budget that through a little sweat equity we raised a lot of funds. Probably about 2.5-3 years ago, when I started, we were trying to find ways to make things easier. We recreated our website. We wanted to make it easier for parents that are coming up to run events. So we have an event website that not only can track a registration, but also collect payments and everything else. So we're not sitting there with about 500 checks in our pocket trying to run to the bank with cash and everything else. Everything's electronic now. It's a lot more automated. It's a lot easier. And I'm really trying to sell the volunteer thing, because as some of the folks roll off, we need the new parents out there to come on and join and help out. Boosters is a lot of fun. You make a lot of friends. It's one of the reasons why, I stay on working with people that I like to work with, and volunteering. It's important. And not only do people see it, our kids see it. And we need more and more parents to join on. So going back to about 2019, we sat, I know Paul Desmond was there, and I think there was a couple other folks in the room, and apologize, it seems like 10 years ago since COVID. But we sat in a room, we did some of the policies, wanted to make sure that the school committee was, satisfied that, we were doing the right thing as far as when we're hanging up banners and things like that. So we put a list together, and I can email it to you. And it had about, I think, 38-40 sponsors that we knew we could approach and make some money. For the first year, just General Boosters alone made $30,000. And the football team also made a good, I think, $6,000 or $7,000, and that was just the first year. One of the things we wanted to do is, when we hung up the signs, we wanted to make the new signs standard. So we tried to have a gold and maroon banner. We tried to make them look good. And as you could probably see, they're a little bit more visible than they have been in the past. It's been really great, because a lot of the businesses did step up. But unfortunately, we had, the COVID hit, a lot of businesses really struggled. And thankfully, we still had some sponsors, and you'll see them still hanging up on the fences. We had about 20 or so sponsors. We're down to, I think, about 8. We lost about 12 during COVID. Now, that being said, we just started a campaign, and I'll get into that in a second, in order to get new sponsors for this year. But it was a key way for us to run, to raise funds, because we couldn't do the golf event, right? That got canceled. This year, we didn't do the golf event again because we were afraid of the variant and spending a lot of time, and then to find out we can't raise any money, right? So we switched to another campaign, which I'll mention in a second. But the good thing last year, a number of the bigger companies, sponsors did come back. We still raised about $10,000. It still kept enough money in our bank account that we would have at least 2 years of funds to run the boosters call it nonprofit. So and some of the things that we spend money on, just so you know, is one, the website. We have about $400-500 scholarships to the students, so about $2,000, and we were able to do that last year. And so, anyways, so this year, what we are doing is the brick campaign. So we had reached out to, of course, Greg and Keith and Mike Masserino to say, this is an idea that we'd like to do. It's something that we don't have to have a lot of interaction with people. When we did the brick lane in front of the football stadium, it looks really good. So what we would like to do is to, wherever you guys see fit, we were going to put the bricks down and get some, and that's how we were going to raise money this year. And so we've started to make calls and things like that in order to start raising funds, and hopefully it's going to be great. We have all the forms and signups and everything else is on our website. If anybody's interested and want to put your name on a brick with a nice message to the school, that would be fantastic. So I guess the next thing is probably what you're interested in more is the approval process. So I guess two things. We had a pre-approved list of about 38, I think 38 to 40 companies. And that was, mainly banks, restaurants, just stuff like that, right? Companies that wouldn't really have, and no one would really have an issue. We circulated that a few years ago. I got the approval and then reached out to a number of companies to see who would sponsor us. This year, we can do the exact same thing and send out, a list plus a few more names as to what companies we'd like to target. And then if there's a company that's not on that list, we would go through Paul Desmond and we would send, we have a form, but we could either send the form or a spreadsheet and just say, this restaurant is not on the list, like approval, or this company, is maybe in Northborough, can you approve the new sponsors? So that what that did is it wasn't just sponsors that people might think is a little out there, but it was also some rules where you couldn't have like junk food banners in certain places in the school, and there was other rules that volunteers like myself are just not privy to. So that was part of the control of making sure that the sponsors get approved before we put them out there. So because of COVID, we didn't have any new ones. So it might seem like a while since we've sent the approval list, but the fact that the BRIC campaign is just starting and we're starting to solicit is why you haven't received it this year. But you will receive a list, and then you will also receive more and more as we continue the BRIC campaign, which is going to happen for a few months. So I'll stop there.
So in your packet, I did include a list of the pre-approved sponsors and those who are currently sponsoring either windscreens, banners, or signs.
So Greg, I think our policy says we have to approve any sponsorship that's over 500, I think.
Correct.
Right?
Correct. So annually, it says once a year approving those sponsorships that are above $500. So there are three: the baseball scoreboard sign from Ravidia Bank, concession stand sponsor from Main Street Bank, and then the Rafferty windscreen.
Okay. So we have a few questions. I guess we'll get to that in a minute, but starting with Kathleen Holland.
Good evening, Mr. Spataro. Thank you for your presentation. I saw that the Boston Athletic Boosters has pulled out of Boston Public Schools, and I imagine you saw that as well this week in the Globe. And as you begin to move away, I'm wondering about the long-term plan for sustainability that you all have, because that certainly is a cautionary tale. Then I have a couple of other clarifications, please.
I'm not sure what you mean.
The Booster Association folded, and so no longer will be supporting the Boston Public Schools athletics.
Okay, so I'm not really sure about what's going on there, but I can tell you we do the filings every year. It's part of that $10,000 that we raise to make sure that we're doing the proper filings with the state. We just got our certificate in order to not only operate as a nonprofit, but also to, when teams go out to run a banquet or purchase equipment and things like that, they'll get tax breaks. They don't have to pay the taxes on that because we are a nonprofit. So our goal, and the goal of all the youth sports that we've run over the years, is to have at least 1 year, if not 2 years, of financial to be able to cover our costs. And so our costs are $10,000 a year. Our booster program has about $20,000 in the bank to cover that. And then with the programs, with the BRIC campaign and other things, we'll cover those costs. Plus, we typically will have extra costs where we're able to, fund the new speakers at the stadium, the bricks that create the entrance, to update the cross country course, the sports complex proposal that we worked on for the sports complex. So there's a number of other things that, on top of making sure that we have enough money to cover our costs, that we're able to fund with our program. So.
Thank you for that. And I was looking over your website, which you had mentioned, and I noticed that there's a lot of the former mascot readily available and evident. And I imagine part of what you're looking to do is to start to transform that website. Is that correct?
That is correct. So a lot of the parents, we basically, General Boosters runs pretty much all year, where some of the team reps will just run for a season. So during the summer, we basically don't do much. If we try not to do a lot. So September, we just started ramping up. We just did the BRIC campaign. So that's something that I can go back to our programmer, and we can start taking that down.
I was writing furiously, and I did put the Boston Globe article about the Booster Association for the Boston Public Schools, which certainly leaves a lot of children at risk, which thankfully we don't have to face. But did you say that you spend $2,000 in scholarship with your fundraising?
Yeah, we have 4 scholarships at $500 a piece, totaling $2,000, 2 for girls, 2 for boys. And they apply every year, and then we give those to seniors.
Okay. I think that's all for now. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathleen.
If I could just say, Paul, that you do make a good point. I mean, this is a volunteer organization. Some people, I think the biggest thing that we did, and I mentioned it earlier, is we need parents to volunteer. It's not that hard, right? In fact, it's fun. My first days as president, I was selling Reese's bars, and I'm sitting there going, how am I going to make a lot of money selling Reese's bars? But what I missed the point was, is it was for the community, right? This is to boost the community. This is to get that energy out there, and but on top of that, we still needed more money. So of course, I'm in corporate America, so all I'm doing is trying to figure out ways to make money a lot easier for parents. But on the flip side, the golf event, the nights out, barbecues, like that's where the booster community, what it's really all about, the spirit of, the athletic community, and just having fun. So anyways, sorry.
So through the chair, can I just make one general comment, Paul?
Sure. Yeah.
And that is really around how our athletic budget is funded. And, obviously it's funded through the operational budget, and then also athletic fees and gate receipts. So what Boosters donates and raises in terms of donations and sponsorships really is in addition to the gate receipts, athletic fees, and the operational budget. And it provides a lot, but the program doesn't stand on what the Boosters raises in sponsorships. It's in addition to.
Right. Thanks, Greg. Karen, you had a question or a comment?
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Tom. I just, on this spreadsheet with your sponsors, it looks like there's only 3 sponsors right now and all these other are available because they're not filled in. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm not sure what you're looking at, but I'm assuming it's the list, and I just sent a blank list out. So I guess there's 2 lists. There's the approved list, which you should see about 38 companies, and then there's another list that are some of those companies and where they made signage. So for instance, Avidia Bank is the baseball concession. Last year, we didn't hang their sign. We talked to them because there was no baseball, right? So we hung those near the stadium. Main Street Bank was actually the concessions, but concessions was closed. So they actually sponsored our scholarship program for the $2,000. And then you saw Eden Rafferty Law, which has been a long sponsorship. But we have about 10, and you'll probably see the signs, but I can tell you which ones are active right now and which ones we're going after. I'm not sure when we sent that. It might have been earlier this summer.
Yeah, there's only 3 here, Avidia, Main Street Bank, and Rafferty. Everything else is blank. But so I was just kind of concerned that what you're saying is, where's all the sponsors?
So we're getting the sponsors now, but so I'm sorry, Avidia Bank, Main Street Bank, and Rafferty have agreements where they're the sponsor for 5 years. So you're seeing them on the list because they never come off the list because they haven't expired yet, where everybody else expires once a year. That's why they're not on the list.
I'll also comment that, to your point earlier, Tom, that, the pandemic that arrived in the spring of 2020 really slowed the work down. I think the boosters had some great momentum going, and I think what I'm hearing you share, Tom, is that you really were trying to ramp up again in a difficult time.
COVID was extremely difficult. I mean, we reached out to our sponsors and they said, we're not even open. We can't sponsor you right now. And we didn't even know if we could hang up banners, if anybody was even going to come to the game. So, but this is the time, September, where we start to ramp everything up. There's a lot of energy. And that's when we start going after all our sponsors for an annual basis. And the list.
Thank you. I don't want to draw this out, and I know there's a lot of, but thank you. I guess my question, the other thing too, for example, is cross-country course sponsor. I've never even seen one out there. So I guess I'm saying, if there was an opportunity for someone to do that, and that's, my kids did that. So I never saw that out there. I don't. This is the first time I'm seeing this.
So Karen, the list that you're looking at is, so we've always had the banners right in front of the stadium, and then we kind of spruced that up and tried to get sponsors for baseball and things like that. That's when COVID came and everything just stopped. Obviously, sitting in my house, I've had a lot of time to think, and I'm sitting here going, Boosters runs concession stand, and we make a few $1,000s, and we work so many nights to do that. But now, what we're trying to do is, in working with Greg's team, is how do we create a program that earns a lot more money every single year to help with some maintenance costs and things like that, right? So some of the costs for the banners and things like that, or for the sponsors, helps boosters stay afloat, gets our 10,000, 20,000 in the bank. The rest of that above goes to the cross-country course. So I actually, this summer, added the cross-country course because, it might be one of those things where someone wants to sponsor that, but we haven't even started that whole list that you're looking at right now. That's all new. So, yeah.
No, that's great. I mean, I personally think it's awesome because I think that it could be sponsored, right? So I think that's awesome. Yep. The other thing too is on the website, which I actually checked out the other day, and I saw your brick fundraising campaign, which is great. I didn't see any prices. So I would have bought one, but there's no prices.
So, and I'm glad you said that. So when you click on some of the fields, the prices will pop down.
Okay.
But I'll talk to the programmer because
now I see it. But yeah, it should maybe in the paragraph tell how much they are. Okay, got it. That's it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Joan has a question. In the meantime, though, Greg, is there any chance you can pull up this spreadsheet that we've been referring to?
Yeah. So the spreadsheet that was included in your packet was the spreadsheet that Tom provided in June. So again, this is kind of a retroactive looking back.
Could you share that so everyone can see what we're talking about?
Sure. It should be. It's also linked in the packet. So hang on. Let me see if I can find it.
Okay. Joan, you have a question or a comment?
Yes, Greg, it's page 10, of 79 of your linked agenda, if that helps. Tom, thank you very much for what you do along with the boosters and all your parental support that you get. I mean, you guys have, throughout the years, the boosters have been a vital part to the athletics. And I appreciate everything you do. And I know how important it is that if you have more members, as a former member of the boosters, the wealth gets to be shared. And I remember doing candy, selling it outside of the basketball games, and some interpretation going into it, but we really did have fun. I have a question onto the sponsorship pre-approved list. And I see Greg's coming up with it now. The first one is, I know this is into the future. It talks about this stadium turf field sponsor. It said if turf, and it says that the maximum sponsors would be 10. Where would you envision putting 10 sponsors? And this would probably be something that would be sprayed. It says sprayed sign. So how would you do 10? Would it be on the end zones, or where would these signs be?
So first, the list that you're looking at right now is, so there's, let me take a step back. There's two lists. There's the approved list, which has a list of all the names of the sponsors that are there. This is the list of places that the sponsors can go, can buy. So for instance, when we look at, the baseball scoreboard, we gave this to Avidia Bank, and Avidia said, you know what, I want to be the baseball sponsorship. And they did a 5-year contract at $1,000 every year. And then so on and so on. So when we go out to so Avidia was on that pre-approved list. And then we gave Avidia this, and they said, this is what I want to buy. So the one thing that you guys aren't seeing is the pre-approved list of sponsors.
Okay. But I'm just asking the logistics. Where would, if we have a turf field and that gets approved in long-term projects, where would those sprayed advisors signs be on the field? Would it be in the end zones, or how would they be visible?
I mean, they're typically in the end zone or the midfield. I mean, that would be up to you. Okay. As we're selling that, it's really this list. You see when we say maximum sponsors 10, I'm not sure why that's there. I think that just got carried forward by accident. But the term is important because it's a lot easier for us to manage and keep bringing in income when we do these sponsorship deals that go out, say, 10 years. So if we get the turf sponsor and just say it would be $1 million for 10 years, that's the money we have, and in 10 years that expires, and now we'll need to get a new one. One of the reasons we brought that up is because we had some of the policies had no expiration on them. And so when we met with Paul and I think Kathleen, a few other folks, we wanted to make sure that any of these sponsors either were annual or they had an expiration to them, that it wasn't a perpetual one. You see some of the signs that go way, way back. I think Polar is on the softball field, one of the old signs, and I think that ended up getting taken down, but some of those just stayed up there for a long time. So.
And then my second and last question is, thank you, Tom, for that, is do you have any flexibility in the term in years and in also the maximum sponsors? I'm just looking and saying, maybe there might be a new business coming into Northborough or Southborough and says, gee, I would just like to do 1 year. So do you have flexibility in that? Because they don't know if they're going to last 3 years in the COVID pandemic, how we're in right now. So that's one question. And also, is the maximum sponsors, I see that on the back of the stadium, it just says 3 banners that are 6 by 9. What if you would get more to support that? Could you increase that, or is that the maximum you're going to allow on the back of the bleachers?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We are flexible in any way. In fact, any changes to this or any suggestions, I would go to Mike Masserino. Mike would turn around and go to, Sean Bevan and Greg, because the majority of the money, if we were to sell all of this is about $50,000, right? Mm-hmm. And on an annual basis, right? If you start to get, so if someone comes to us with money, we're going to find a way to put their banner up and to get them with us. And so we're going to be flexible.
Okay, and well, I'm sorry, but one last question just came up. When I'm looking at this sign, like hanging signs and the banners, who makes the final approval of what is going to be on that sign as far as, because now that we're looking at a mascot and a new mascot, so we would have to be very aware of what's going to be, what any kind of logos would be or any symbols. Who has the final approval of a banner?
For anything that Booster does, we run it through Mike Masserino first, and then he runs it up the chain of command from there.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Thank you for answering all my questions, Tom.
Yeah, no, anytime.
Kathleen Holland, did you have another question?
I did. I think I'm channeling Paul Butka here. The last time you came to see us, Mr. Spataro, and it was an evening, I think, that the PTO was there and talking about that they really only had a few $1,000s in the bank and just a few people working. And I know that the music boosters is $10,000 to $12,000. How is it that you could work in the fundraising here not to exclude these other fundraising efforts that are important and to a large number of students that aren't participating in athletics? I'm concerned about so much money going in one direction and any limitations that might be for fundraising, because they are left selling cookies and cakes and candy bars almost as the usual course. I've never seen an arts group do a golf tournament, and I think it's perhaps high time that they went for the higher value, higher fundraising. But there's this inequity that Paul spoke to a year or two ago, and that I'm still seeing, certainly, and wondering in what degree there's a consideration in sponsorship monies for other needs within the school district.
Yeah, I mean, put it this way, we put this list together and we said we're going to try to see if we can sell this to the businesses in the community. If say a team came up to us and said, hey, we would like to we have a sponsor that would like to have one of these, but we want some of that income, we would work with them. If some of the other organizations wanted to partner with us to raise funds, again, the most important thing for us is, number one, cover our costs, and then have some extra money to help with some of the upgrades and enhancements that we've done over the years. But if, I look at it and say the more the merrier. We're raising money for the high school at the end of the day. And if other people want to join in, we're definitely not going to turn them away. We can always work something out. And again, at the end of the day, this is the school's property, right? We are helping just to raise funds. The school can say, can slice it and dice it any way you want.
Although it does remain strictly in athletics and athletic programming.
So I'll just comment too that, the policy that was developed was really a policy for any volunteer organization, whether it's music, drama, the arts, athletics, to utilize to try to raise funds on behalf of our students, regardless of whether they're athletes or musicians or artists. I think that the Boosters has just done a fabulous job capitalizing on its expertise in the community. And, I think I would encourage other organizations, whether it's the Music Foundation or NEF or SEF, to reach out to Tom to see, how did you organize this? How did this work? How do we capitalize on Tom's expertise? Because again, I think it's really important to keep reiterating that this is all volunteer. These are very talented people who are donating their time on behalf of our students. In this particular example, it's athletics, but this could be a music, or this could be an art, or
the PTO. In particular, which seems to be the one with the least resources. And anyhow, I'm looking at kind of that bigger picture and sensibilities and sensitivities across the fundraising in the community toward the school. and reaching more students. So thank you.
Okay, so I'd like to move on to a vote on this, but Greg, help me on what exactly we're voting on, because I see these is like 1,000 a year, 2,000 a year, 3,000 a year, and they all end in 2024, which means they started in 2019, I guess. So are we just voting the 1,000, 2,000, and 3,000?
Yeah, so I think for the, so the basically the policy reads that, you know, I'm responsible for bringing forth a list of the sponsorships or donations above $500. And last year, annually, and last year, these were the donations. So Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, Avidia Bank donated $5,000 over a 5-year period. So each year donates $1,000. So, and it would be $1,000 for the baseball scoreboard and sign. For 2021, it would be $2,000 for Main Street Bank, and then
is that right though, Tom? It says total amount paid up front, and it's 5,000.
Yeah,
did
so they write us.
pay them?
Yeah, they write us a check for $5,000 up front.
So if we just do a one-time approval call,
That's what I'm thinking. So
yeah, since we have the money.
But we haven't done this before that I know of.
No, this is the first time.
So is the motion accepting a $5,000
Yes. Yep.
sponsorship from Avidia Bank? Okay.
Yep.
All right, I'm going to put a motion on the table then that we accept a $5,000 sponsorship from Avidia Bank for the baseball scoreboard and sign, $10,000 from Main Street Bank for a concession stand sponsorship, $15,000 from Rafferty Law for a golf event sponsor.
Second.
I'll move. I mean, sorry.
All right, so it's moved by me, seconded by Dan. Any discussion? All right, roll call vote. Karen Ayers,
Yes.
Chris Covino,
Yes.
Joan,
Yes.
Kathleen Holland,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Kathleen Belichko,
Yes.
and I'm a yes, so it's unanimous. All right, well, thank you very much, Tom. Appreciate your being here and all that you're doing for the high school. Much appreciated.
Thanks, everyone.
Yes, thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
Okay, and one more item on the new business is a legislative update.
And there are no legislative updates at this time.
Okay, then. And that brings us to the superintendent's report to the committee.
Sure. So I'll turn it over to Principal Bevan for his report.
Thank you, Greg, and good evening, everyone. Greg, can you make me give me sharing permissions? Although you might have done that. All right, it looks like you have. Sorry. Bring up my screen. So good evening, everyone, and it's my pleasure to give you an update on how the reopening of school has gone and several other key items for this year. First, we welcome along several new staff members, and I have their names here. Their names you probably don't recognize exactly unless your child perhaps has them. But we have people in a variety of departments: applied arts, mathematics, the tech department, our guidance department. We have 2 folks in our guidance department: student support services, special education, and fine and performing arts. Worth noting, Lisa Doherty in special education comes back to us. She had worked in our NET program years previous, and is returning to us. Jennifer Cummings similarly had worked in our guidance department as our CRC coordinator, and she is back with us. She's also a graduate of Algonquin, and Paul D'Agostino is in our fine and performing arts, and he's a graduate as well. So some of these people are new. Some of these people are new to us or old to us in some way. So they're all off to a good start by my observation, and we have lots of different ways we support them, and we're excited to see make connections with our students and to show us all the wonderful things they're capable of. So we're looking forward to their excellence this year. So I'm just going to share some photographs of what reopening has looked like for us this year. As you might recall, a year ago, we were in a very different place, and we were really working incredibly hard on implementing ever-changing COVID mitigation strategies. And this year, we still have some, but on balance, or in generally speaking, we have school is much closer to normal. And what that looks like is the kind of school experience that you're more familiar with than less. So classes are not in cohorts, as you know. We're doing full classes, and we're not running a remote program this year. And classes are set up in ways that are not governed by the social distance requirements that made school so difficult last year, as kind of from a room setup perspective, but also from a instructional strategies perspective. So teachers have been able to go back into their well-formed kind of skill set and kind of their bag of tricks to work with kids and use all kinds of different engaging strategies. So we're seeing a lot more of kind of what I would just think of a typical school environment. And these are just photographs I grabbed in the last few days. And this is kind of what school has returned to being. So students working sometimes in desks and rows, as is pretty common in most American high schools, but also being able to move around the rooms and to work together on a variety of different things. So the photographs you hear are pretty typical of what we're seeing. Students have been have to wear masks, of course. Anyone in the building at any given time has to wear a mask. I will note that our students' mask compliance was cause for some concern. I will just share with you, I was a little worried that our students had been away all summer and probably not having to, especially if they're vaccinated, and many of our students are, a very high percentage are. Didn't have to worry about wearing masks. Many of them were doing lots of outdoor things, and having to come back to a mask environment was something I was a little worried that we might get some resistance to, and students have really risen to the challenge. And you know, we do a lot of reminding here and there. Maybe a mask will slip below a student's nose as they're going down the hallway, or when students are coming in from outdoors, they need to be reminded, or when students come into the building from being outdoors for athletics or anything like that, then they'd have to wear masks. Of course, I think you're aware they don't have to wear masks for outdoor athletics, but do for indoor athletics, which for us right now is volleyball. So our outdoor lunch is an opportunity for kids to get some sunshine, and kids really like that. And they were afraid I would go back to kind of no more outdoor lunch, and we're doing that again this year, and gives them a chance to be outdoors and get some fresh air and spread out a little bit as they eat their lunch. And then on Friday, this past Friday, and Mike mentioned it, so I won't go too deeply into it. We had our first football game, which was really our first football game since 2000. And we had games last year, but not with full crowds. And in 2019, our crowds were impacted by Triple E. So we have not had a full football experience for in several years. And so we did so this is a kind of a moving image from Friday night and our students, and it was a really great festive atmosphere that kids really enjoyed. Additionally to that, I will stop that motion, but we're looking forward to having other events that are more typical of our school year. Those are fun and performing arts performances that will include in-person crowds. We will continue to consult with Mary Ellen Duggan and the medical advisory team as we plan those things, but right now it's looking good for those kind of events to be more typical than not, as there are not limits on numbers of people who can be in the space, and kids can have a more typical experience in showing off their talents in the fine and performing arts. In particular, we are planning Seussical the musical, and that's going up later this fall. And we have a whole series of our concerts programmed that we're planning to go off. I don't see any I don't expect that we will have a lot of trouble with having those things happen with great success. So we are back and we are open, and kids, by my observation, are enjoying it. And it's really nice to see them in an environment that's more typical than less. They've really had a few years of really interrupted schooling, and it's nice to see them back in a regular environment. And it's nice to be able to, I think, enhance the rigor of the classroom, and students are meeting that challenge. So that's something we are excited to see. So I was asked by Greg to give a bit of an update on our school start time, which, as you might remember, after many years of wrangling when I was not here, I was the great beneficiary of coming into school when the start time was about to change this year, and it did indeed on the first day of school, September 1st. It's our first day of a start time, going from our former start time of 7:20 a.m., as you know, with an end time for the school day of 1:50, and going to an 8 a.m. start time with an end time of 2:30. So it's a 40-minute shift, which is really significant. I don't have to explain that. I think the brain science to you all, you were the ones who were so critical in making this major change that will, I think, enhance our kids' lives and our adults' lives in many, many ways. And so we're really excited about it. I'm excited about it. And it's something we're adjusting to. And it's been a fun feature of the year, especially coming out of the pandemic. So just a little bit of feedback from students on this. So I did reach out to some students and pulled in some kids to ask how it's been going, and some adults as well. And one in particular said it's been really well received by the student body. I've heard many positive remarks in my conversations with peers, the majority of which have to do with the ability to sleep in more. So that's, like, at the risk of stating the obvious, like, kids are enjoying that. I think in particular, our student drivers who are not, their arrival to school isn't dependent on the bus, are able to really kind of maximize the impact of that start time change. Staff as well, maybe even staff more than students, I don't know, are really excited about this and are enjoying it. And so I left the house today at a little bit later than my normal time, and my wife thought I was running late, and I wasn't. I just was like, it's our later start time, and I was taking my time to get out of the house. It's great. So I think staff are indicating that the pace of the morning, the start of the day, is feeling less rushed, and they're feeling better rested. So it's been very exciting. I don't know. I know I referenced, I can go into the NEAS date change, but I don't know if Keith Lavoie, because I did reference buses. I don't know if that's an opportunity you want to take to.
Sure, I can jump in with just a couple of comments to add on. Certainly a huge thank you to Andy McGowan and his team to help with the observations that we're taking at Algonquin, both in the morning and the afternoon, to expedite traffic. As you know, there are not 20 different exits and entrances to Algonquin, so it is a little limited, and that does get crunched from time to time. We have made some small adjustments to the system without radically changing it, and have found an immediate improvement by just pausing at certain times during, especially the dismissal time, has really allowed the buses to get on and off of campus in a more timely fashion, which has benefited all of the other schools. So a huge thank you to Andy for having that eye and considering, some small changes to begin with, and then Principal Bevan and I and others, if needed, will continue to make observations and adjustments as needed. The other thank you I want to send out is to Jean Pinto, our transportation and registration assistant, for her creation of the routes. This was done in combination with NRT and our drivers. We are very fortunate to have retained all of our drivers. And if some of you have been watching the news, you'll see the bus driver shortage has been quite widespread. It does impact us, not necessarily for the day-to-day, because all of our routes are covered. But if we do have a bus driver or two that need to be out or miss their routes for a day, we do not have substitute drivers. So it has impacted us at Algonquin so far. But we were able, Jean Pinto and NRT and the drivers, we came up with a plan over the Labor Day weekend, and we didn't have much interruption to service. In fact, our buses were more on time than they were prior to that. So that was exciting. We don't want that to happen every day, but certainly we're up for the challenge, and we've executed that so far. Collectively and overall, after day 8, it has only been 8 days of school. Our routes are performing well. All of our students are getting picked up and brought to school. We've had many days that all the schools are on time to start, which is great. That certainly wasn't day one, but we got into a pretty good pattern there. And I think the thing going forward, what we're going to do is a lot of analysis. We're going to look at the arrival times. We're going to look at the length of the bus routes. We're going to look at the routes themselves, of what things need to be tweaked for that improvement. But overall, I think we're off to a great start. Principal Bevan, recorded some of the responses we have gotten, and it's been favorable. And now we're in a mode of analysis and also getting back to parents with special requests that they may have. So all in all, we are off to a good start, but now we're getting into the analysis phase. That's how I would generalize it.
Yeah, I'll add on to that, Keith, that there are several factors here that we are looking as they start to settle in and families adjust to the rhythms of traffic and getting out of the house and getting their routines down in the afternoon, and then returning to, developing new routines for later in the day. That's just information we're going to have to be open to hearing and ask students of. So I'm, asking kids about that and trying to find out how. So for example, I think we're going to need to pay very close attention, especially for our student athletes, about whether or not they're able to get the extra help they might need, but in that now narrower time between the end of school and the start of sports, because of the sunset time, which gets earlier and earlier, you can't really push the sports day back any farther, and the school day isn't going to end, isn't going to change. So that window of time to do clubs and activities or get extra help is narrower, and we are going to need to observe and see how that impacts our participation in clubs and activities, students' ability to get extra help, even though our coaches have been really wonderful, and Mike Masserino has been an excellent and outstanding leader in messaging that school comes first, and students' participation in extra help and clubs and activities should not be interfered with when it comes to arriving late to a practice. So this is just all the kind of things we're going to have to take close data on and understand what students' needs are as this global major change that's going to benefit them settles into our rhythms, and our rhythms kind of adjust around it. So Keith and I are talking constantly about what we're hearing and what we're observing, and we're going to do that more. Okay. So that's all I have about school start time. I know I want to thank all the members of the committee who were part of making this change. And I know maybe some folks were here, maybe some folks were part of the committee that did it, but it's a massive undertaking and a major community investment in students' health and wellness. And I'm really proud to be part of a district that's made that change.
So Sean, I would say it was an odyssey. It took more than 7 or 8 years, and just again, Kathleen Plechko was here for the entire process. So just want to thank Kathleen Plechko, but also Dr. Medina was on the study group, and so it was a community effort. So it's something to celebrate as we implement.
Yeah, it's really terrific. Okay. So I do want to alert the committee to a change in NIASC decennial. I don't know how to pronounce that word exactly. Decennial review of our school. As you may know, NIASC is the New England Association of School Accreditation, and they provide our accreditation, which is important and provides for all schools in New England an opportunity to do every 10-year deep dive into what's going well. I think everybody understands their role, so I won't over-explain it. The visit has been postponed due to COVID from 2024 to 2025 because all the schools that were ready to do their visits had to hit pause on that, and that pushed everybody out. So ours got bumped from 2024 to 2025. Our self-reflection work will begin during next year, 2022 to 2023. And then we'll begin our conference visit, which is like the beginning of the ramping up to the visit itself in 2023. Kathy Carmignani is our assistant principal. She's going to be taking the lead on this work and just being prepared for the many different stages that lead up to that visit, that accreditation visit. We look forward to doing that. So just in summary, this is what the timeline will look like for the process of examining our process, our school's work, and to remain accredited, which I don't foresee any issues with. Okay. Any questions about the NEASC date change? Okay. Other updates, we've already covered the approval of sponsorships with the wonderful Tom Spataro, who's very helpful, of course, and a real team player. And then I just wanted to share that one of the goals I've set this year is to take a new look at how we do open house for our parents. And I don't think it'll be a massive sea change, but I'm working with my department heads to examine how that experience is for our parents. I think without setting real goals for what we want parents' experience to be like, I think sometimes that night might not be so, it might be highly informative, but not super engaging. So we are asking teachers to try to share with parents the how and what of the student's learning experience, and reduce a little bit less time, or focus less time on classroom policies and grade weighting and things. So my hope is that parents come away from that night feeling like they have a really authentic understanding of what what their child's school day is like. And so it should feel a little bit more maybe active and engaging than it has been in the past. So this is an undertaking I took in my former school, and it was well received, and it really did feel like the school day almost like picked back up at 6:30 p.m. into the 9 o'clock hour, because teachers were more accustomed to teaching. They were teaching 10-minute lessons to families in a way that was informative about how to best help and support their child, but also what the school environment's like. So I hope that that's a success. Keith and I can provide a bit of information about the mascot change, which is now going on. We're well past a full year in really this undertaking. So I want to, before we get into the renaming endeavor, I want to share with you as you know, we have a deep commitment to examining that education or using education to enhance students' understanding of our history as a school, the contributions of Native American people in and around our region and towns and countries. So that will be important. It's not just about changing the mascot, it's also about educating our young people about our mascot and about the contributions of Native Americans. So I look at that as really a three-pronged effort. Part of it will be curricular, part of it will be in kind of bringing students on board as freshmen in the freshman orientation experience. And part of it is to create a physical display, a museum style display for students to see and visitors to our building to see. So I don't think there's any one easy way to enhance a school's understanding and education around a singular topic. So this is kind of a three-pronged effort that I just will walk you through very briefly. Excuse me. So primarily, I'll be relying on, or at least asking our humanities teachers to examine how much and to what depth we are teaching the Native American experience, and that will be, and already is, covered in great depth in U.S. History 1 and U.S. History 2. What that looks like is a close focus on the impact of colonization and revolution and westward expansion, and how that impacted Native communities, and an examination of American Indian Citizenship Act and the modern American Indian movement. I will say I don't think we've done a huge amount in our schools, at least at the high school level. I think it might happen at the middle school level, to examine the local tribal communities and their impact on New England. Additionally, in varied English classes, we have a real very close and deep dive into literature contributed by Native American writers in the course Silence Voices. That, however, is an elective and is primarily enrolled by students who already have this interest. So it's not enough to just rely on that class, because it does not touch so many students as is necessary to make this change happen. So students in sophomore American literature classes do read some Native American literature, and that's been happening here for 20 years. When I was a teacher of sophomores, we were doing that when I was a teacher here, and so that will continue, and we're looking in English and social studies at ways to enhance or refine some of that approach. Additionally, we will be, this year, I provided for incoming freshmen a brief overview of our history and just to tell them that they're part of a major change in our school's history, and will be part of this mascot change will be happening in the coming months. So I walked them through that and a bit of a history lesson. Next year, when we have a new mascot, I think we'll have a new feature to incorporate into that orientation experience. And frankly, I'd like for it to be a little bit more engaging than I was really able to do this year. So I'd like to revisit how that went and to even improve that further. And then Kim Honey is our librarian. She has agreed to lead a committee to develop a museum-style display of school artifacts that reflect and explain our history, including our mascot. And so that will be Kim Honey. She's looking to identify some students. We already have a few staff, and she's working with the Historical Society to identify what should go in there, in what format, what kind of verbiage we will use to explain the history of our school and our mascot. So it's this three-pronged approach that we're excited about, and will take time, but we're committed to that work. All right, and then the renaming committee that the renaming study group, the mascot renaming study group that Keith and I are leading, has met a few times since we last met, since the regional school committee has met. And so here is an update on that work, which I'm sure you're aware of. We've tried to keep you abreast as this work continues, and we send out our various communications about them. So Keith, you're welcome to jump in at any time, but I can overview what those meetings look like, and the summaries are all online and were emailed to the community. On July 13th,
the only quick thing I would add, Sean,
Yeah,
is just the composition of the committee. Do you want to mention that real quick?
Sure. I think, you might know the number off the top of your head. It might be 16 or 18 members. We have, I think, 6 or 8 students, and that number initially was very low on student athletes, but as I think members of the committee are aware, we increased that number because, first of all, so many of our students are student athletes that it would have not been proportional to the number of student athletes we have in our building. And also the mascot is really something that athletes feel a real, attachment to, I think. So we have a member from Boosters. We have Mike Masrino's on there. I'm on there. We have parents. We have folks we know who are not thrilled with the mascot change that we've invited to be part of the group because their voice is really going to be critical, and it's already been important. And I'm trying to think who I'm missing. You've put me on the spot. Keith.
Yeah, sorry. A couple of school committee members, Kathy Key and Karen Ayers, have
how did I forget
given
that?
their
I'm
time
sorry,
as well.
Kathy. Yep.
And you said, well, and a staff member, John Cahill.
And John Cahill, yeah. And we have a parent from each town, one from Northborough, one from Southborough. I think both are also alums, if I remember correctly.
That is correct.
And they've been it's been a really great undertaking so far. Initially in that first meeting, we overviewed the timelines of how we got here effectively, the work that we did as a study group over the course of November through April of last year to examine this issue. I provided that brief historical overview of ARHS that I know that this committee felt was powerful and helpful in orienting folks. And then we talked about the purpose of the mascot. Between the July 13th meeting and the August 16th meeting, we implemented a survey of the community for what their mascot suggestions would be, what kind of qualities they'd like to see. And we got something in the neighborhood of 650 to 700 responses. And even inside of those responses, some folks had multiple suggestions in there. So the data was pretty robust. We had many, many suggestions. And I think you probably have already seen that spreadsheet, which heard strategies and storytelling cleaned up for us and we were able to share out to the community with as much transparency as possible. And then on August 16th, Jake Messier from Heard overviewed the data, and gave his recommendations about the data, which are, as I think we're trying to explain it, are not binding, but are certainly helpful in letting us know what the data represents and how it matches to other communities. So we did an overview of that information on August 16th, and on September 20th, we will be meeting again.
The only other comment I would make, Sean, is that the committee at the August 16th meeting didn't really have a lot of time to review or think about the responses. And since that time, many of the committee members have been able to dive into that. So we're really looking forward to the September 20 conversation. We're going to actually have that in person, which is great, which will really allow for some great dialogue and really digging deep into the different recommendations that's been posed, so we can start to really dig deep and have quality conversations. So that's the hope of the September 20th meeting.
Correct. And I can just go through the tasks that the group are trying to accomplish are to identify the district and school core values that the next mascot must align with, to create the criteria for evaluating the potential mascot options, to work with a branding partner to identify and facilitate a mascot renaming process, and to engage in a comprehensive process to identify 2 to 3 mascots to deliver to you, the regional school committee, and present those, which is the second to last bullet point there. And then to engage the entire school community, school student body in a voting process to select one or two, one of the 2 or 3 mascot options. And so I think we're about halfway through this task list. We've identified the school and district core values. That was certainly not hard. Created the criteria with the help of the group, and we've been working with a branding partner. But now we are in this narrowing process of taking 700 people's 1,000 deep mascot choices and starting to narrow that down to a suitable list. So our current focus going into our meeting on Monday is to review and gather study group feedback on the survey data, now that they've had about a month to review it and to think about it and to talk with their peers and others around them about that data, and to start to examine. One of the things that we're certainly going to be digging into on Monday will be our top highest ranking survey choice. That was not Tomahawk, was certainly one that a lot of people wanted to make sure we understood was something they were excited to keep if that was an option. However, it's not, and so Thunderhawk ended up being a second choice option, which presents some challenges. And so we're going to be reviewing Native American input and feedback on the Thunderhawk as an option, and I've invited, or Keith and I have invited study group members to really think about that and to do their own research and to arrive at that meeting on Monday to discuss that. That's going to be I think a really robust conversation about what our next mascot should be. I think that, there you go. So,
all right. Well, thank you, Sean and Keith. Looks like Dan Kalenda has a question. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, thank you, Paul, and thank you, Sean. I mean, you and I have chatted a little bit about this. You have no easy task here, and I think I am the one person who wanted to, get some more community input before that vote was taken a few months back. Nobody else on the committee thought that any more input from the community was necessary. Since then, I have heard from lots of residents. We have already seen, and you mentioned it in passing, but and I have a few questions that I'd like to get your opinion on, your thoughts on, from really community members who have reached out to me. First of all, you kind of quickly went over my review of the results was the Tomahawk itself was by far the largest, received the largest number of votes. Is that correct?
I think if I remember, it got 96 8 votes, Keith might
I think
know,
90
and
99.
Thunderhawk might
Yeah,
have been
99 mentions, Dan.
70
Yep.
or 80. So out of 1,000 votes or 1,000 distinct entries for mascot choices, it got 90 something. Yes.
Right. Yeah. A lot of them were clearly throwaways. As you go through the list, it was silliness abounded in a lot of those. You had mentioned that the group that was helping facilitate this head something, I forget their name, but
Herd strategy and story.
Herd. I'm sorry.
Storytelling. Yeah.
So they were either tasked with or allowed to or asked to go through that list themselves and just say no themselves. I heard you say it's non-binding, but there are people in the community who saw that spreadsheet and saw the word no or whatever it said. I forget what it was. And were confused and wondering, well, if the community says X, who are they to say no? And if the community says also X, we would like, whether it's a tomahawk or whatever else, and they don't believe it a racist symbol, they don't agree with the 9 members who declared it one or thought it was one, and if the community is saying they want at least the top 3 to be considered, who is heard, or who are, I guess the committee could always vote not to accept whatever the top vote getting 1, 2, or 3 or 4 are, and then offer to the student body only what they want them to consider. So I know there's a lot there, but part of this is people are upset that they didn't believe they were heard in the first place. Now they see that they have an opportunity to be heard, and they're voting, and their vote doesn't matter. They might as well just, put none of the above.
Yeah, I hear you, Dan. I don't know exactly how to respond. The herd strategy and strategies and storytelling's role was to provide us with guidance on this process, and the recommendation that Jake provided was simply that, and Keith had put that in his email out to the community, and I don't know how to respond if people didn't participate in that and didn't read that and didn't only consumed what was in a spreadsheet. I don't know how to respond except that I think this is it takes being engaged and paying close attention, and we're trying to be as transparent as possible. This process, just to articulate that and illustrate that, the process of trying to promote participation in this survey alone, we put flyers up all around town in pizza shops and in lobbies of businesses, and to try and engage the community. And so if folks are indicating that they don't feel heard, we're trying our best to do that.
Well, I think, Sean, they don't feel heard when they are asked to vote, and then a third-party vendor says that your vote doesn't count.
So I don't know. I think
John,
he'd have to respond, but I didn't think he didn't say their vote didn't count. He was indicating that his recommendation was that would not represent a commitment to change, for one, and that there are elements about the word Thunderhawk that would be contrary to what this study group indicated would be the acceptable criteria for the next mascot. So I think it's
right. No,
I get
the
top 3 choices.
Yeah, and I get all of that. Thus, the predicament that you're in, and hey, this committee can do what it wants because it already voted, not to continue with the tomahawk. It could change their mind if they want. If there's an overwhelming community, support for that, this committee can do what it wants. So my point in bringing this up is that there is, there are folks that believe they weren't heard before. They had an opportunity to vote, and they believe they're not being heard again. And I've been asked, so, all right, Mr. Kalenda, what is one to do? Do they go out and do another change.org type of petition online? Do they go to the transfer stations in their respective towns and collect signatures and ask that something be brought up in a special town meeting? All I'm suggesting is that the more inclusive we are with people who wish to have their voices heard, the better off we're going to be at the end when whatever this committee decides to put forward, at least people have had that opportunity to be heard. That voice can be rejected at the end. That's why, you know, people in positions, elected positions, have that authority. You know, so the regular citizen has their voice. This committee has a vote, and if you know. So anyway, I wanted to bring up those two concepts. You know, of the herd given their directive as to what they said was appropriate or not. I still think that's up to this committee. And then just making sure that people's voices are heard, whether or not this committee wants to hear them or not. If they're allowed to be heard, I think that's going to be a lot better than, you know, asking people to vote and then discounting all those votes without even a discussion.
You know, can I jump in here, Chris? I see your hand up. I'll get you in a second. But correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't the herd people predict that the top vote getter would be the Tomahawk?
They did.
So, I mean, that to me was
Jake,
not surprising at all.
So Herd has done this work in 2 other communities, and his telling is that in those communities, this same kind of survey produced roughly 35 to 40%.
No, higher than that, Sean. Between 50 and 65% of the responses to a similar survey were the prior mascot.
So his interpretation of our data was that our pro Tomahawk votes, or however you would like to characterize them, wasn't as intense as it was in other communities. I will share in total, just in the interest of total transparency, the way our question was phrased might not have been identical to those communities. And our question asked, the wording was something like, what mascot should we choose to replace the Tomahawk? So it didn't exactly lend itself to Tomahawk as a choice. And so I don't know how to compare that to Neshoba or other communities, except we're our own community, and 10% of the respondents put Tomahawk on there. However, Tomahawk was voted to be retired in April, and so the work of this committee is dedicated to identifying the next mascot that's not the Tomahawk.
Right. And the other thing, I think there were 3 others that were sort of similar to Tomahawk, like T-Hawk and Thunderhawk, and I forget what else, that they were recommending that you not go with, which I'm guessing is because if you're going to change the mascot, you change the mascot. And, doing something like that could be seen as a slap to the Native Americans that we're trying not to offend. So I was really glad to hear that you're getting some Native American input on the Thunderhawk names, and I assume those others at your next meeting. So
yeah, and just to respond to Mr. Kalenda, the Thunderhawk was identified by Jake Messier as not appropriate because for a few reasons, but one of them was that it didn't demonstrate or reflect a commitment to true change because it was such a close cousin to Tomahawk, and we could keep the abbreviated version T-Hawk in place. And there were a lot of conveniences about that people really enjoyed, and that makes sense to, I think, anybody paying attention to that. But also that there could be some Native American tie-ins to Native American history, and there turns out there are, and we've reached out to Native American, all the Native American tribes registered with the United States Department of Indian Affairs to get feedback from Native American tribes, and we're gathering that feedback now, which we're going to share back to the committee to let them know that the notion of Thunderhawk as a top vote getter is not being ignored. In fact, and even though Jake Messier indicates that his recommendation is that we do not use that as our next mascot, that's his opinion and that's his recommendation. This group is being convened to provide for us their input, and we're giving to them all the feedback we have about what Native American tribes, all the ones we can find, have weighed in. And so I think that's going to be important. I think it's going to be an exciting and robust discussion. And, we can share back what the results of that discussion are.
Thank you, Sean.
Okay. Thank you. Chris?
Thanks, Paul. I'm actually going to pass on my question actually it was really a comment just in the interest of time. I don't want to belabor the point. Thank you for recognizing me.
All right, thanks, Chris. Okay. I think that's it on this topic then. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
And I believe that brings us to Vision 2026 action
Sure.
plan.
So when we reauthored the strategic plan, Vision 2026, the idea was that each year we would create a annual action plan. The plan really is designed to be dynamic and to to be adaptable and changeable depending on circumstances. And I think last year's circumstances was a great example of how you have the best laid plans, but you have to adapt and change. So what's in the packet is the action plan for 21-22 and the strategic initiatives that we hope to accomplish. This work was completed by the leadership team and again will be used to drive the goals and the work of not only our principals, directors, but also educators in terms of what we hope to accomplish this upcoming year. Also in your packet is the enrollments as of September 8th, 2021. So obviously last year was a difficult year to determine enrollments as a result of the pandemic. I will share that as of September 8th, we had 1,269 students. NESDEC was projecting 1,161 students. So we had 108 more students than NESDEC had projected. So October 1st is the key enrollment data that is used for Chapter 70 funding. So we'll continue to monitor this information and report out to the committee. But I think it is important to note that our enrollment is 100 more students than we had anticipated from our projections. And then lastly, I'll just share that in terms of 8th graders enrolling in Algonquin Regional High School from the spring 8th grade enrollment numbers. In Northborough, we had 107% of 8th graders enroll. So we had 7%. We had obviously new enrollments from Northborough into freshman year at Algonquin. And then in Southborough, we had 92% of our 8th grade students enrolled in Algonquin. If you recall last year, the number was 80%, and I believe the year before that, it was about 85%. So this number is higher than typical, which is a good thing. And we are looking at whether we had more new enrollments or whether we had more 8th grade charter students enroll at Algonquin just instead of private school. So we'll have more data at the October meeting to share with the committee.
Okay.
So next in your packet is the FY final 21 expenditure report. I just want to applaud Becky and the financial department for the great work it did closing out fiscal year 21, launching fiscal year 22, and believe it or not, today we launched fiscal year 23, the budget process. So Becky has living in 3 fiscal worlds right now. So so Becky will give an update on fiscal year 21, the final, and then speak to the statement of revenue for fiscal year 21, and then move into the FY22 monthly general fund expenditure report and a statement of revenues.
Good evening, everyone. So as you can see in your packet, we did end FY21 with a balance of $396,910, or 1.64 remaining on the bottom line. That amount will revert to the district's excess and deficiency account. We are estimating that our E&D will be in the 4.0 to 4.3% range, pending certification from the Department of Revenue. We will be applying for that certification during the month of October. This is right in range with our June projection, where we had thought that our E&D balance would be at approximately 4.14%. You'll also see on the monthly general fund report, the food service program did end the year with a $44,763 loss. In January, if you recall, we presented a plan to address the estimated food service deficit of $144,160. And that plan included the utilization of $40,000 from operational budget. So I'm pleased to say that the $44,763 represents the total loss in the food service program for last school year, which our plans to mitigate that loss were very helpful in that regard. Also included in the monthly general fund is the final athletic budget. The budgeted amount of $165,946.30 reflects the final athletic expenses that were paid through the athletic revolving account. When we review the revenue report next, you will notice that revenues totaled $166,400 for the school year. One athletic salary was moved onto the operational budget to ensure that athletics stayed within their revenues received. Greg already mentioned this earlier, but the athletic budget is based on projections of athletic revenues that are derived from athletic fees and gate receipts. So we really need to be careful with this budget that we are staying in within the limits of the revenues that are received. So I do want to commend Mike Masserino on doing a great job at making sure that he was within those budget parameters. In terms of the FY21 revenue report, as you can see, our state transportation receipts came in $200,484 over our projections. You'll also note the lower amounts of receipts for athletics, student activity, and parking fees due to the lower amounts that were charged during last school year. I would really like to extend my sincere appreciation to the finance team, specifically Chris Tague, Caroline Willard, Sunny Cox, and also Michelle LeMay for all their work in closing out the fiscal year 21 budget. They've worked tirelessly over the summer and they've done a great job to have everything completed in a timely manner. Paul, I didn't know if you wanted to take votes on those before I moved on to the FY22.
Yeah, why don't we do that? So if I could hear a motion to approve the fiscal year 2021 end of year general fund expenditure report as of June 30th, 2021 until audited, as well as the Northborough. Okay, I was gonna do the other one at the same time. But
I'll move both, Paul. Thank you.
all right. Along with the Northborough Southborough Regional School District Statement of Revenue, June 30th, 2021 until audited. Moved by Dan, is that right?
Yep, I'll second.
Okay, moved by Dan, seconded by Chris. Any discussion? All right, roll call vote. Karen Ayers,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Joan,
Yes.
Kathleen Howland,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Kathleen Polichko,
Yes.
and I'm a yes, so that's unanimous. Well done, Becky and team.
Okay. And so for FY22, as of August 31st, we had $1.9 million remaining on the bottom line, or 7.81%. Last year at this time, we had $3,294,000, or 13.65%. Our team this year has worked diligently to encumber known fiscal year 22 expenses, and that's why we have less remaining on the bottom line, because we're really trying to make sure that we are projecting out clearly for the fiscal year. And then also just to reiterate that the athletics budget that is included in your packet, the $302,909 budget is once again based on those projections of the athletic revenues. In terms of the revenue report, as you can see, as of August 31st, we had received the September 1 assessment from the town of Southborough. The student activity fees that we are projecting for this school year are considerably lower than prior year projections, since we are only assessing students who participate in clubs and activities. So we have made that adjustment on our projection. And if you recall, we also made that adjustment in the FY22 budget. We have also kept the circuit breaker projection at the same level as the fiscal year 21 receipts. We have not received word from the state yet on when our final reimbursement will be for circuit breaker, both for the out of district tuitions and then also for the special education tuition. So we are awaiting word from the state on that amount of money. And that concludes those reports.
Okay, thank you. So same thing, I think we can approve both of these at once. So I entertain a motion to approve the Northborough Southborough Regional School District fiscal year 2022 budget monthly general fund expenditure report as of August 31st, 2021 until audited, as well as the Northborough Southborough Regional School District statement of revenue as of August 31st, 2021 until audited.
So moved.
Moved by Dan.
Second.
Second by Chris. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Karen Ayers.
Yes.
Chris.
Yes.
Joan.
Yes.
Kathleen Holland.
Yes.
Dan.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Kathleen Polichko.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. It is unanimous. Thank you, Becky. Are you still up for capital plan?
Oh, so that is not Becky, although she's more than welcome to take this.
Okay.
So no, just a quick update that we will be reviewing the capital plan. I will be convening the capital plan subcommittee in the next week or so. I believe Cheryl will send out a doodle poll so that again, we have a review of that plan and really think about what projects we want to move forward in FY23. Also in your packet is the FY23 budget priorities. As you recall, last year we spent much time realigning the budget priorities to Vision 2026. So again, if folks could take a look at the budget priorities and share any feedback with Paul, we'll spend more time at the October meeting finalizing these budget priorities. And just again, a general comment that these budget priorities are essential for the work we do at the central office and at the building level. You know, when we have to make difficult financial decisions, the budget priorities is where we look to prioritize. And also in your packet is the FY23 budget calendar. So the budget calendar is populated with dates. Again, we'll keep a running agenda of dates and meetings. But again, the FY23 budget process is launched and it will be a major focus for the next several months. And then lastly, Becky we'll turn it back over to Becky for the OPEB PARS account update.
The OPEB trust program statement that is included in your packet is for the month ending June 30th, 2021. During fiscal year 21, the district contributed a total of $250,000 into the trust. $100,000 of this contribution was made in June following the school committee vote. We're quickly approaching the 1-year mark of establishing and funding this fund. As you can see, it was October 29th of 2020 that we started this fund. And as to date, or as of June 30th, the trust has accrued $28,976 in earnings in addition to those contributions. So I think that for a 1 year, not even a 1 year period, the trust has done well.
And that concludes the superintendent's report, and be happy to answer any questions.
All right, not seeing any questions. I guess we move on to old business, starting with the solar update.
Yes, so Keith will give a brief update on solar.
Yep, glad to, Greg. over the beginning of the summer, I reached out to the solar feasibility study group to let them know that we would be reconvening this fall. I'm planning to send out an invitation for that meeting relatively shortly. And the idea is that we are really going to explore different options at Algonquin Regional, as well as other locations throughout the district, to see what our next steps are available to us. We have developed some nice partnerships with our utility companies through the project that we did last year, and really listening to what other school districts are doing. We're hearing there's a couple different paths that we can take. So our partnership with the town is also strong in both Northborough and Southborough, and we're looking forward to renewing this dialogue and seeing what next steps will be in front of us. So the committee will expect to reconvene probably within a month.
So just comment, one of the areas we're looking at are canopies in the parking lot. That is one area where we studied, but also there was additional space on the roof at Algonquin for additional solar. So our thinking when we did put solar on the roof at Algonquin, it was a proof of concept. So now that we've had a fairly successful project, we'll be diving in a little bit deeper to see what other opportunities are out there in terms of energy efficiency and reducing our carbon footprint.
Sounds good. So the canopies, if I remember right, there's a lot of, like, when we were talking about the roofs, if you needed a new roof, you could wrap that in and make it a whole package. Is that the same with the canopies and the parking lots?
Yeah, so I think we're looking at maybe funding a larger capital project like repaving the parking lots, through canopies. But again, as Keith mentioned, once we convene the solar study group, we'll start moving forward with some of those ideas and conversations.
Okay, thank you. The mascot study group update, I think we already did. So distribution of the 2021-22 subcommittee and liaison assignments should be in the packet, which brings us to policy development and/or distribution and review of the face covering policy A170.
So just a quick update on, I think the commissioner's requirement of masking through October 1st. I think it's true. My recommendation to the committee is to not take any action this evening on the face covering policy A170. I anticipate that we'll receive more information from the commissioner in the next week or so around, what is the off-ramp for masks for districts. I think that there's a lot of conversations around positivity rates in the community combined with vaccination rates. We have been monitoring our vaccination rates at Algonquin Regional High School, but I think to have a deep conversation with the committee this evening, my recommendation is wait till we have more information from the state. We did meet with a medical advisory team this afternoon, and their recommendation, which I support, is have the discussion at its October 20th meeting around lifting the mask mandate. And that way, by that time, we'll have more data around what's happening within our population. We'll have more town level data, and then we'll have a position from the state around how districts can implement an off-ramp for masks.
Yeah, my only hesitation there is we don't meet until 3 weeks into October, and if the state says you can go ahead and do away with your mask October 1st, and we've got 3 weeks to go. But let's see what other people think. Dan, you have a question, comment?
No, I agree, Paul. I mean, if the state comes and says, okay, as of October 1, here's the criteria or here's the percentages, and masks are not required, then I would move tonight that the committee follow the state guidelines effective whenever they're in place, whether it be October 1 or a later date. But I would also, like Paul, I don't want to wait for 3 weeks after or call a special meeting if the state comes out with some revised guidance and we have the opportunity to vote on that either tonight in anticipation of that if they don't come out with anything, then any vote we take, doesn't matter until such time as they do. And we could always meet again October 20, but, my point is why wait? Why make the students wait who have been, I think in large measure, you'd be shocked if you find students that love the mask and can't wait to just continue wearing it. Obviously, especially those who are fully vaccinated. And so anyway, my strong suggestion is we make that possibility available to those students as soon as practicable.
Thanks, Dan. Can we hear from the medical professionals on this, maybe? Dr. Medini, care to weigh in?
Sure. I can start. I mean, I think, there are a number of issues at play here. And the first issue is that masking itself is just as important right now as vaccination, because we do know that there is always a small possibility that a vaccinated individual can transmit the virus. When someone is exposed to COVID-19, there is a small amount of virus in their nasal passage. And if you're vaccinated, it may still be there for a few days. You may transmit it somewhat, you may not, but there's always a chance that you might. And you will not get very ill from it. There's no doubt about it. It will be a very mild illness, more than likely in someone who is fully vaccinated, but there is that chance. And I think, whatever we can do to protect our unvaccinated, our vulnerable, our immunocompromised within the school building is very important. As far as, children and teenagers wearing masks, I think we know the overwhelming majority of them wear them without any issue. And really, there's little downside to adolescents wearing masks while they're indoors. And I think at risk of losing what we already have, which is a huge sense of normalcy for our teenagers with their school experience, and also, the fact that they are in a much better place socially, emotionally than they've been for a year and a half. I think, we've all seen that in our teenagers. So, I think at this point, this is the reason we're advocating to keep masks on until the next meeting, when we can reassess again, A, where our community rates are, and B, look at our vaccination status within our school and within our community. So, in mind, they already are allowed to remove their masks outdoors. They're removing them at lunch. So they do have a fair amount of time where they're not masked, but keeping them masked while they're in class is going to be crucial for us in terms of keeping our numbers down and keeping normalcy in the school building. Finally, anecdotally, there are cases of high schools that did not require masks, and those high schools have really suffered in terms of kids missing school, activities being canceled, and things like that.
But if the state lifted the mask requirement on October 1st, for communities that are, 80% vaxxed, I think, would you be comfortable lifting the mask requirement at that point? Mary Ellen or Safdar, either one.
I think what we've discussed is that when we look at the 80%, we would like to see 80% at each grade level. So right now our numbers are, we have 81% when we take the average of all 4 grades, but our freshmen are only 73%. So those freshmen really aren't meeting, those people that teach the freshmen, the whole freshman class that are together in their classes for the most part, aren't at that 80%. So the fact that the upper class, pull up that percentage rate, I would like to, if the state just says 80% at the school, is that factoring in the staff and all of that? I think we need to look at where their 80% is coming from. And I think we need to look at it individually on an individual basis, like each of our grades, we would like to see at 80% before we lifted the mask, if that's where we go. And I mean, it's going to be our case rates in our town that we're looking at per 100,000, and where that is and where it's been and where it's going. Just similar to what we did last year when we were looking at the yellow, red, green, what we did in different things and where we could be. So I think it's probably not just going to be one data point that we need to look at in order to, pick the safest choice for our students.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you.
Safdar, do you have anything else to add to that?
No, I think that's really important because our community rates, are, they are actually higher than they were this time last year. So we do need to be very mindful of where our community rates are as well.
Okay, thank you. Dan, did you have another question?
I did, but I know Sean popped up as well. So, and I've already had one shot, so I'll
Okay.
definitely hold.
All right, thank you. Go ahead, Sean.
Thanks, Dan. I would be in favor of having more data, and if we needed to, trust me, I don't want another meeting, but having a meeting before the October 20th if something from the state does not change or they give wishy-washy guidance like they often do. Because anecdotally, what I'm seeing right now, it's not just about keeping the kids in school, but it's also keeping staff in school and staff families safe. I'm seeing, what are we, 8, 9, 10 days in, and in many other schools, I'm finding lots of breakthroughs and then lots of testing and lots of staffing out. So, it's not just about keeping the kids in school, but it's also keeping the teachers in school too. Even though they're vaccinated, they have the potential of catching, having a breakthrough, and then there's their families and so on and so on. So I think I don't have enough information and data, like hopefully this trend drops precipitously in October. And hopefully the state issues clear guidance and does not kind of do one of those things where they kick it down the road. But I would be in favor of meeting before October 20th if nothing substantial is given out by the state or we need to and really look at data just for that purpose. That's my opinion.
Dan, are you okay with deferring to Chris too?
I sure will. Thank you.
All right, go ahead, Chris.
Great, thanks, Dan. I am in favor. I agree with Sean. I think that it's an important enough issue that I'd rather keep our policy that we have currently in place until we have more information. And then if the state does provide more guidance on October 1st, if it's important to us as a committee and as a community, I don't see a reason why we couldn't schedule a meeting very shortly after the state issues its guidance. And then we can decide from there what we want to do. That's just my take on that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Dan, back to you.
Thank you, Paul. So, so I've already heard from Safdar, I've heard from Mary Ellen. Safdar, I know you, do I understand correctly, you're an MD?
Yes.
Do I understand that you also stated that masks are just as important as vaccines?
They're a part of mitigation. So,
Okay,
right now.
You had said it was just, I want the community to understand what you really mean, because I believe I heard you say they're just as important as vaccines. And I would be shocked if we wanted to state to our community that wearing a piece of cloth, noting that they're all not N95 masks. These kids do not wear N95 masks. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so the vast majority of them are wearing a piece of cloth over their mouths and nose, which may provide some modicum of protection, but is clearly, I would be shocked. I mean, if you're telling our community that wearing a piece of cloth is just as effective and just as important as being vaccinated, I don't know what kind of message that's sending to our kids and to the parents who can bring them to get vaccinated, and tell them, don't worry about getting vaccinated. We just heard from our doctor that you can wear this piece of cloth over your mouth. Unless I'm totally confused what I think I exactly heard you say, and I wanted to at least give you the opportunity to respond to that and maybe refine what your comments were.
Well, I can clarify that. I mean, vaccines are obviously the most important way in terms of controlling the pandemic. But right now, our two tools that we have are vaccines and secondary masks. So we have two tools that are effective. at controlling our case numbers. And that would be
Right.
vaccination first and then masks also.
Well said. Thank you, Doctor. And you had stated that there was some semblance of normalcy that has returned to our student community. I will beg to differ, and I believe that masking is not in any way normal for any human being to have to wear that for the vast majority of the day, noting, of course, they're allowed to eat and they're allowed to go outside and not wear a mask. But to intimate that it's normal, that we're in a state of normalcy with our community, with our kids wearing masks, I think is not the right perception to give. I don't think it's normal at all. And when it's safe to get rid of masks, there's also, as you may know in your profession, there are also issues with wearing masks that have heretofore been not fully documented. We don't know what the long-term effects are of kids and adults wearing a mask for upwards of 6 to 8 hours a day. So I don't want to discount that either. And then, Mary Ellen, I've heard you say, and I think you've probably heard it from community members who they think you're way too conservative on masking, and that this is a zero-sum game. If we have one case of the flu, or if we have one case of a breakthrough, then everyone is wearing masks until I say otherwise. I think it's important to follow the state guidance. We have experts here on this Zoom call. Awesome. But, to tell our community that, well, if the state comes out with 80%, and I'm going to suggest that it's 80% in every, if the state comes out and says 80% in every grade, we're not the only high school with 4 grades who go to the same high school. So I'd be shocked if the state didn't, in their guidance, whatever they come out with, doesn't take that into consideration. But if your recommendation is going to be something different than the state, then okay, then we'll listen to your recommendation. But I think this board, this committee will have that opportunity to either agree with that or to go with what the state mandate is, noting that I think it's people have this is not a state of normalcy. We got to get out of it and get our kids back to, and we also know that those that get a breakthrough, it's incredibly mild. Some don't even know they have symptoms. And yes, they could give it to someone else who also may not know they have symptoms, or as we've heard, it's generally very mild among our student community. So I'm happy to wait, if we need to, for a special meeting near after 1 October. I don't want to make our community wait if the state comes out with something different than we have today. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Greg?
Yeah, I just want to maybe state the obvious, and that is, I think the common ground is, what is the off ramp? And there might be disagreements around how do we remove these masks safely, but the common ground is that we want to have students not wearing masks at some point, and we want to do that in a judicious manner. No one knows the exact right answer. No one can predict the future. Again, what I'm advocating for is, if the state comes out next week, which I think we'll hear from them next week, and they add additional criteria for removing masks, which I think there's a high probability they will, then I think we're gonna be right where we are today, with kids wearing masks with new criteria. So my proposal is just waiting some time. I mean, if we have a meeting early in October, so be it. But I think it's too premature right now to remove the mask policy without knowing exactly what the state's going to do. So that's my position, my recommendation.
Okay, thank you. John, I'm going to skip to Joan, who hasn't spoken yet, if that's okay. Go ahead, Joan.
Okay, thanks, Paul. After listening to all the discussion going on, and then also reflecting back where we were in March of 2020 and where we have gone from last summer, our medical staff that is here today, and even the nurses and everybody else that is on the team of Mary Ellen Duggan and Dr. Medina and all the medical staff, they have led us through where our district didn't have to have a lot of closures. We didn't have to have a lot of classes to be isolated, and maybe students had to, but we didn't have entire classes. I think that all the measures that they have put forward, from the testing, from the pool testing, educating us on that, has allowed us to be, I would say, at the forefront of having our schools in session. I think when you talk about the normalcy, no, it isn't normal right now, but we're back pretty close. We heard from Sean Bevan and from Mike Marcerino talking, and saw the pictures of the football season in place, all the fall sports, where last year at this time, we didn't have fall sports. They had to be divvied up, and football, cheerleading happened in the winter, and or into early spring was the football. So based on where we have been, how we've been educated, I am for, and I think we can also come in for a special Zoom meeting or a meeting and make it our top priority to see what the state is going to come up with. And if it's before the next regional meeting, it's our duty to try to attend that meeting and take the vote at this time. I would not be in favor of looking at the existing policy and taking a vote tonight and changing it. Thank you.
Thanks, Joan. Sean?
Just one other thing to consider, earlier in the meeting, they talked about the testing and the pool testing component. That isn't up and running yet, and the state really needs to provide the district with all the resources to get that running, because that's another critical component to removing masks. So yeah, I would be in favor. If our policy is just way out of line of what the state says in October, getting back together to revisit it. But if it's in line with that, then revisit it in our October meeting. But and testing and the data are just two other pieces I'd like to consider.
Okay, thanks, Sean. All right. Well, I don't know how we would make a motion that would cover all these caveats anyway, so I think I'm in favor of waiting, whether it's a special meeting or the regular meeting. It's fine with me. So unless somebody wants to make a motion, otherwise, I think we'll move on. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. That brings us to audience sharing. Looks like we have one attendee with a hand up, Devonna Cartier.
Hi, can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Great. I would like to say that as a parent with a third grader at Woodward who doesn't have access to the vaccines yet, I would really appreciate it if the committee would maintain the masking policy until my child could be fully vaccinated and therefore have a layer of protection against this virus. As a parent, that's where my personal off-ramp for masking would start. And I thank the committee for your time.
Okay, thank you. And I don't see any other hands raised. Is there anyone else on the panel who has something to share? Okay. And moving on to personnel, we have distribution of personnel report and new staff assignments, which is in the packet, I believe. Communications, there's 3 items in the packet. Greg, I don't know if you wanted to speak to any of these.
Yeah, just comment on the first item, that is the memo regarding the Bartlett Street traffic mitigation update. So Sean Bevan and I have been working closely with Town Administrator John Kader. They, through the work of the Select Board, conducted a traffic study, which was conducted by Ron Miller and Associates. And as a result, the Select Board actually voted to make Bartlett Street, a portion of Bartlett Street by Algonquin, a safety zone, which means that the speed will be 20 miles per hour, I believe 500 feet in each direction. It will be during the morning, and then as well as in the evening when school dismisses until 9 o'clock at night. I also just would share that the town is also looking at other safety mitigation efforts in terms of traffic and also pedestrian walkways and so forth on Bartlett Street. So just more of an informational update.
Okay, thank you. Otherwise, we have approval of bills and payrolls, which happens online. Maybe we can take that off the agenda. Just a thought. Agenda items for next month: recognition of National Merit Scholars and distribution of the 2021-22 department presentation schedule. And we also talked about the budget priorities discussion.
Yep.
Any other suggestions for budget, for agenda topics for next month? Okay. With that, I believe we're done.
So
and
moved.
I don't think anyone made a motion yet, Dan, but I'll entertain a motion to
Just having
adjourn.
fun. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Made by Dan, seconded by Sean O'Shea. Roll call vote. Karen Ayers,
Yes.
Chris Covino,
Yes.
Joan,
Yes.
Kathleen Holland,
Yes, please.
Dan,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Kathleen Polichko,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. We are done at 9:33. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Have a good night. Thank you.